Well, hello everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good wherever you are in the beautiful world, and welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. You've seen me a few times today and doing what I love, chatting to very interesting people. And I'm so happy and so grateful to have with me on Aquarius Rising Africa today Lynn Monet, who has been on before with Jerry Marzinski. So, Lynn, welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you so much for having me. I was really looking forward to doing this with you today.
Well, I'm very happy to have you, and I'm very grateful that I know you're a busy lady and you're zooting around all over the show. And I mean, of course, so it's nice to catch you in between. And I really enjoyed the conversation we had a few weeks back with Jerry Marzinski. I mean, of course, when we were talking about the more focusing on the schizophrenia and schizophrenia not really being voices in your mind or your head anyway, but really attachments from the lower vibrating, as we sometimes call them, the chicken shit demons.
Yes.
Yeah, that really can wreak absolute havoc in one's life. So, and I know that you were also born with special gifts and things like that. And maybe you would just like to, reintroduce yourself, if you will, to the viewers and maybe just give us a little bit of a background about where you come from, what got you into doing this. And I know you're the author of several amazing books and you're doing a lot of stuff right now. So it's really cool to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. As Chantel said, I am Lynn Monet. I have currently 5 books out. I have a omnipresent series that was initiated. Well, let me just back up a little bit. I have had gifts ever since I was little. I have the gift of second sight. These are my books. The very first one is the one with the hands coming through it. That story is about a house that I purchased as a single mother that was so haunted that I never moved in. It was that bad. I mean, bruises, claw marks, bite marks, you name it. It was happening not only to me, but the people that sold me the house, as well as it's a story in itself. And that covers an actual event that occurred in the house when my son was in the master bathroom, actually sitting on the loo. And he saw that coming, it hit him, and it terrified him so badly at 7 years old that even now at 25, he still will not sleep without a light on. Everybody asked me what happened next. So I did the omnipresent what happened next. And this is actually an actual picture of the front of the house. And if at any point anybody can zoom in, there's a green face in the window that I inadvertently caught because I took those pictures. I was getting ready to put the house up for sale and accidentally caught one of the demons peering out the window. So if ever anybody wants to even look up the book, they can zero in on that and see that it's there. And that story was about what happened afterwards. The fact that the people that I sold the house to did end up selling it. I did get a hold of the people that sold the house to me and found out what was happening, as well as finding out a lot of things in the area that were also occurring, because they found out that there was already a book written that whole area is haunted everywhere, including the restaurants and the playhouses and everything. Of course, I didn't know that. And I have an addition, and that one also too is the one that has the mental illness and the addiction attachment things in it, if anybody wants to read that. The third book in this series I already have written. I'm looking for an editor right now. So if anybody does editing and you want to contact me, even if it's something that you do just on the side, you can reach me through my website, www.lynnmonet.com. And that's LYNNMONET, like the painter.com. And there's a way to reach me through email that if somebody would like to help me edit the book Omnipresent 111 Becadon Drive that is waiting to come out. And it is a story about a string of townhouses where the houses are attached one next to the other. And there was a naked ghost, the first time I've ever seen one naked, because usually they show up in clothes. that was going from townhouse to townhouse, crawling in bed with women and pulling down their underwear during the nighttime and doing other things.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, and I have a picture of the ghost too, and it is in the book that I also took myself and caught. I'm working on a 4th book in the series of Omnipresent, which will be a total of 5 books when I finish. The 4th book is a book called Omnipresent Gnome Place Like Home. And this references a recent event that I totally had no skills in and had to learn very quickly. I inherited a house that I thought was haunted, and it did have some souls wandering through there, which wasn't a big deal. But when I tried to clear them out, there was this other problem. There was an elemental that was coming into the house. A Bogart actually had a portal from England through the backyard that was coming into the house, and removing those, you can't. They were there first. And so anything that you have, the saging and all of that, doesn't work with them because, it doesn't affect them. They evolved and were created when the earth was created, and it was way before religion had anything to do with anything. So that was interesting. And the story talks about that. The Colors of Heaven, which is the one with the rainbow on the front, Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End, is a book that I wrote as a nurse for 40 years, 17 of which has been in end-of-life care and palliative care. I am a death doula, and which means that I help people cross over naturally with comfort measures, but not all of the drugs and the things like that. Death does not hurt. Usually, I've never heard of anybody saying that the death hurts. Some of the symptoms prior to it, you might have aches and pains, but not death itself. It does not. But this is a book that I wrote after seeing my mother cross over and leaving her body, which I do see people leaving their bodies. I've seen hundreds of people pass away in my profession. And I wrote the book hoping to take the stigma of death and dying away, and hope to help people that maybe have lost someone or who has somebody that has been diagnosed with terminal illness. And there's an area in the book that I do talk about time, and I mention this because those that have a better understanding of time on the other side knows that it's timeless. We are linear on linear time here on this plane, but I had to explain it in linear terms because a lot of the people that would be reading this book isn't going to understand the timelessness in order to have them understand the short period of time that we're actually here in comparison to being on the other side. So I hope that people will read it and find much comfort. There's a beauty to it. It talks about people crossing over, and it talks about people that are in that stage of testing the between the dimensions, and they come back, they talk about things that they've seen, like children that haven't been born yet, and beautiful things, and as well as some of the things that happened beforehand where people are actually seeing spirits of loved ones coming in, and they talk about them. And unfortunately, the medical field sees that as hallucinations, but they're not. This is to be expected. The final book that I have, The Gap, I have a 15-year-old daughter, late life baby at 46. I've got 2 other children that are grown, which are the children in the first couple of books. And I was looking for a book that's more modern, that talks about this new gender movement, that talks about other things besides just the birds and the bees that they get taught in school and hopefully at home too, a better teaching. And then there's like this gap where it leaves off and then picks up with human trafficking and that sort of thing. And so I wrote the book because, it talks about things like how to clean out a refrigerator properly, and how, to get, to even wash dishes and stack them. But it talks about things too, that like what to do if a condom breaks. Not that I'm encouraging people's children to have sex too soon, but if they are having sex and the condom does slip off or break, they do need to know what to do to protect their future, because there are things that they can do, and they don't need parental permission to get them. There are things in the pharmacy, and they're not abortion pills. There are pills that stop the ovulation, and it won't hurt a child if there's already a child forming in the uterus. It won't affect it at all. But And also not to go out on a date, your first date with stinky sneakers, because no matter how gorgeous or handsome you are, there's nothing attractive about smelly feet and sneakers. So just things like that, and to get off your phone. So it talks about that. And so I'm hoping that that will also help people maneuver with their children better, to have a more rounded understanding. It is not candy coated. It is straightforward. So I suggest that parents read it before they give it to their children, to make sure that they feel it's appropriate. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I love that, common sense advice. That just sounds really good to me, like this common sense advice. Absolutely.
It is.
Wow.
So many people, they have their kids that are so used to loading a dishwasher that when the dishwasher breaks, they just kind of stand there looking at the dishes like, well, what do I do with those? So it tells how to properly hand wash them, and and different things like that. But there are a lot of good life skills in there. There are no naked pictures in there. So don't anybody worry that there's body parts. There are verbal descriptions of body parts, but there are not body parts. But there are pictures of things like inside of a trunk, which I didn't know until I started even writing this book, that most trunks in cars that are like 2008 and newer have trunk releases on the inside. And it shows pictures of the buttons and the trunk releases and where to find them on the inside. So if you get put into a trunk, you know how to open the trunk to get out of the trunk from the inside, as well as where a crowbar is. So that if you've been abducted and you're put into a trunk, you know where to get the crowbar, so that you can open the trunk and whack the person in the head. You know what I'm saying? That the abductor, if they come to get you, there's a way to defend yourself. So there's pictures of stuff like that in there, so that they would know what to look for. So
wow.
Yeah,
It sounds fascinating indeed. Great combination. Great, great variation as well. So that sounds great.
I hope it helps. And it is written.
Are they available on Amazon, or where would they be available?
The Omnipresent, the first book with the hands, is on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. You can even get it in Walmart. I don't know if you have Walmart there. And we're in Africa. Do you have Walmart stores?
No, we don't.
Okay. Well, they're you can get them in the bookstores and order them. Colors of Heaven is on Amazon, and The Gap is on Amazon. But my other books are on my website only. So I'm starting to kind of maneuver from Amazon, because for one thing, Amazon doesn't need the money. And the second thing is they're kind of, stingy about, reimbursing the authors.
Tell me about it. My gosh. And don't they just take the biggest lion's share
Yes, they do.
Of the profits? I mean, they just are so greedy.
They do. They don't tell you. They let you pick your 35% or your 60%. But what they don't tell you is when you pick one, that's not what you get. They get the difference. And out of your 35 or 60%, you have to pay the printing and the shipping and all of the stuff that goes with it to get to the person that's ordered it. So in addition, they take it out. I mean, you're lucky if you get to, $1 or $2 for any book. So
exactly.
Authors are not rich people. I drive a little Toyota Corolla, which is a little tiny car that's efficient on gas. So it's I guess the only people that really make money are people that wrote the Harry Potter books and stuff like that, series like that. So
when there's really millions going out, and they're making movies on them. So yeah,
that's right. And they are making all of the money. So the publishers do the same thing. So I'm self-publishing and putting them through my website. So do you have a book too out? Do you have
they're also on Amazon. I've actually written kids books called My Gaia. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Wow.
And also it's more like a kids education.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching kids all the things that they need to know. How does energy work? That's all different chapters. I've done it. It's been on there quite a while. I also have trained some of the Sun Kids teachers internationally over the past couple of years, because it's the Sun Kids programs. And I did a book for Caleb Jade in December. He's one of the whistleblowers, or not so much a whistleblower, but a discloser on the channel. And I mean, wow, he's been through I mean, he's half Native American, half German, and he's been through the entire system. They took him from the age of 2, and he's a genius, basically, and military, um, went through the Gateway experience, was in the Wild Hunt, put
Wow.
into the military, and had the most horrific things happen, but also experienced everything out of worldly, you know, like other dimensions. They were doing giant hunts. They were hunting giants. I mean, just like incredible things, you know. Um, and the fact that he's still alive is a miracle in itself. You know, he's often said to me, his expected lifespan was to live until the age of 25, and he's now
Wow.
50. And he has had. We did a short book in December called Caleb Jade's Book of Miracles, um, and he's had incredible miracles. You know, the way he's been protected by God, the divine force, whatever you choose to call it, is absolutely unbelievable. So the fact that he's still here at the age of 50 is a miracle in itself, and he discloses regularly. He also spent 35 years and he's a master of all 13 magics, so spent most of his adult life and childhood in the arcane and learning the dark arts completely, you know. Very interesting because, you know, when you talk about Jerry, you know, you and Jerry are talking about what happens in the mental institutions when these voices, and I mean, like he knows it. I mean, what they would do through soul gems, through crystals, they literally steal that soul, but it has to, they've got to be given permission somewhere, either through
Yes.
drugs or through something. Somehow they would gain access to that person's soul, and they like use it as a battery, and they do it through crystals, and they call it soul gems. So they would then have the harvest that person's soul, and while that body is vacant, that's when all these entities are having a fat party in that body. And I mean, he
Wow.
would, you know, he was speaking about that sort of stuff, everything, and also not just in the mental institutions, but prisons as well. Those are the two main areas that they would obviously harvest the
Wow.
soul.
That's so interesting. You know, they were talking recently about with prisoners that they've started to give them even 5 minutes a day to meditate, and what a
Yeah.
difference it has made for them to connect in. And I want to tell you, I'm really impressed. I love the idea that you've written these children's books about energy and those sorts of things, because it's so important, especially with where we're headed in the coming months. Even I think in the next 90 days, we're all going to be seeing some big changes. But
Right.
I when we get finished on the show today, I want to make an offer to you if you want. I'm actually I'm redoing my website, and I want to have a featured author. So I would love to put your books as a favor. You know, you would connect up however the payment would go, so it goes directly to you, but I would advertise it as a, you know, as a featured author on
Oh,
my
wow.
page to bring you into the American arena as well. And a lot, and I mean, I'm getting hundreds of hits every day on my website, and of course coming up with things changing in the United States with some of the things that I've newly done on television, that, you know, it'll even be more out there. So we'll talk more about that. I would be happy
I'd
to do
love
that for
that.
you.
Wow. Thank you.
I know people that would love to buy your books. I'm telling you, and I would gladly. I was on 2 podcasts yesterday. One in the United States, one in Japan. To mention you, I would be happy to do that, because I think starting with the children, it's so important. It is
Oh,
so
yeah.
important that they understand and that it empowers them, because there is this paralleling universe that's paralleling ours with things that are not so nice, and they need to be able to
Exactly.
know how, and parents also need to know how, be able to know how to guide their children, and there just aren't instructions on this energetic kind of thing that way, that normally they would consider picking up. You know what I'm saying? That they would go and say, oh well, gee, you know, they get the logical stuff but not the spiritual stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because it's foreign to the parents
Absolutely.
as well. Yeah, it's foreign to the parents as well. So they need the information to
Absolutely.
help guide the child too. So
Well,
yeah.
you know, this is the whole thing. I mean, I saw it, it's such a beautiful concept, and it really is, because I first, you know, as you know, I was also born seeing things and seeing through the veils. And I was told, born in a very conservative area in South Africa, and I was told Jesus hates you and you're a child of the devil. And I so knew I wasn't. I mean, I would like say, up yours, buddy. You know, I mean, there was nothing wrong with my defense skills, you know, but it was very frustrating for me. And I always say, if I'd had this information as a child, my life, I mean, I wrote this book for me, actually. And it was so weird because it came out in 2012, and it was 3 months before my granddaughter was born. 21st of December 2012, it went onto the shelves. And it was 3 months before my granddaughter was born. And it's absolutely amazing how, because I've devised stuff for adults, right? I've done, you know, I was born with this very abstract understanding of how energy works, how spiritual alchemy, basically, you know. And my task was to make it tangible for people to understand. And I did that. I've created 4 adults workshops, major workshops, on how, like 4 legs of the table, each leg, and they're like 16 weeks and 8 weeks and what have you. So it's in depth and it's concise. So what I've done as well is I've taken the adult stuff and I've modified it to the kids stuff. So in the book, it's about, and you know, the creatures that guide the sun kids are the white lions. And according to African shamans, you know, that's the Christ consciousness in an animal form. So it's absolutely amazing, because the white lions are their animal protectors, which is their Christ, the Christ that protects them, right? And how they work with these energies, how your energy works, animal communication, massage, feet, reflexology, the chakras, how the colors, you know, and foods, and organic gardening, and all of that stuff. So all of that stuff is incorporated into this book, and it's beautiful. It's very colorful. It really, I mean, it took me 6 years to write, and Monet, who did the designs, it took him 3 years. So it's like a 9-year labor of love. And then a couple of years back, I then turned that into a handbook. So I then made it into a workbook as well. So I've trained teachers, Sun Kids teachers, how to teach the work. But, you know, the thing is, the kids don't do what you tell them, they do what you do. So when the teachers are on this, it's a 16-week program with me as well. When the teachers are doing this, they're going through a major transformation themselves, because I'm saying, you can't just sit and talk. You got to get in there. You got to do it. You got to work yourself. You've got to mold your gold, you know. So that's what it's about. And then they take it into and work with the kids in that way. So it's teaching kids how to meditate, you know, affirmation. So it's the energy, because your energy is the fuel. And I agree, you know, there's so much that is in this world that the parents don't understand. And because the parents don't understand it, the kids are taught nonsense. And that is why the kids get caught up in the shit they do today. Excuse my language. That's when they're getting caught up with all the stuff that's going on in the world, because the parents don't know any better. So as far as I know, I'm the only one. I don't know anyone else that has done the parents and the kids stuff together. And of course, the teenagers. Teenagers are a very tricky market, because of course the teenagers, they're either very into it or very like, hey, that's so not what, you know, they like to be cool, what have you, you know, spiritual stuff is like. But this is, once they start applying, you know, the whole thing is the application of the teachings. Once you start, and it's not easy, because you don't get to blame people anymore. You know that when there's a problem sitting with you and your teacher, you've got to work with the problem. You've got to see your teacher as a mirror, and you've got to see what in you is she triggering or he triggering, and what in you is being triggered, and how are you going to transform that into creative life force. So that's how it is, that's what we do.
Wow.
It's powerful.
Yeah, I want to buy your book. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot that I can live from it. I mean, in the American culture, there's such a herd mentality that is controlled, and I'm going to choose my words carefully because I don't want fluff tube lately has been overly sensitive with things, but there's that herd mentality that our government tries to keep us going in, and by using fear tactics almost. And so you've got the government and you've got the traditional religion, and there aren't many margins for in between, especially in certain areas of the United States. Like, for instance, where I live is South Carolina, and this is considered the Bible Belt. So you have a lot of people that are very hardcore, brimstone and fire, and you're going to hell, and all of that sort of thing, and they rule in fear. And there are so many children that you can just walk along and you see the light, like it's like a train light coming from their forehead, and you're like, that one's got abilities, that one's got abilities, that one's not shut down, that one is still wide open. And I think that it's wonderful that you're giving people the opportunity with what you have done in your work as a trailblazer to help the children, and like you said, help the parents too. I'm in awe. I would love to put you on there as a as a featured author, and definitely get that out. So and I want to buy one of your books too. So I mean, I would like my 15-year-old to read it. I would, because just in case they were supported, they're empaths, they were supported with their gifts growing up. But just in case I missed something, because we all learn from each other. And anybody that comes forward and says that they're an expert in this, they're full of it, because that's impossible to be an expert in this. We're always evolving and learning from other people and absorbing, different things. And so I want to read it. I would like for her to read it. So I will be buying one of your books.
I would love that. Thank you. I so appreciate that. That'd be amazing. Thank you so much. Wow.
So I'll get that information from you on the back nine so that I can do that on Amazon. And definitely then I have it too, that I could, if I have a copy of it, then I can hold it up on my shows and say, anybody that's got kids, I've written this book and I recommend this book too, this one too. And so definitely get it out there for you.
Amazing. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, you'll have a lot of Americans contacting you for your book.
That'll be awesome. Yay. But I mean, it's, and this is such rewarding work. That's what I'm saying, and it's just, I've always said, to work with people on this level and kids as well, it's like to see the light in someone's eyes go on that minute they get it. It's like the minute. And I mean, I don't work like any other psychologist or psychiatrist or healer or whatever, I'm just very grateful for the way I do it, because I just connect, and the gift that God has given me is that it's like a blind person reading Braille. Mm-hmm. So I can read the energy, and I can see in the body what's creating the issue. And then I talk to the body, because the body is the most intelligent vehicle you will ever possess. So, all your cells are listening. When you're leaving gaps in your body and when there's illness in the body, it really is the energy that has gotten blocked. And it's in that, when that happens and the vibration lowers down, right? That's when all these nasty entities and things will sit there and become parasites and just like feed off that. And then people think they're going mad. They're actually not going mad. Your body is designed to heal itself. And I've seen that time and time again as well. It's so rewarding and it's so beautiful to actually do this. So it's such a pleasure to actually connect with you.
Oh, well, thank you. And, I totally agree with you on that. We call the things that attach here bottom feeders. So they're they're feeding from the bottom, and they're in that low energy. And and you and I had this conversation before too, in helping take attachments off of people. And you were mentioning too that sometimes when there are blockages, I know at one point when my sister had passed away in June, I was under duress, and I wasn't taking my salt baths, and I wasn't doing the meditation that I normally did to protect myself, or even putting up And can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you disappeared for a
Okay.
sec, but you're back.
Yeah, there was a thing that came through that should not have come through on my phone. But anyway, what was I saying? I was talking about
Your sister.
oh yeah, with my when my sister passed away, I was tired and exhausted because she had no end of life directives, and this 100 bird aviary fell in my lap, and I had 5 days to place 100 birds. And this lady came because she knew who I was and what I did, and she said, "I think my son has an attachment," and he did. It was a nasty one, and I took it off. But the thing ended up attaching to me because so even, you know, in that energetic world, when you are helping people, you can have things attach on you too if you don't take care of yourself. So, you know,
Absolutely.
and I did, and I had to reach out to a friend of mine to get this thing off of me. I knew it was there, I knew where it was. And so she came in and energetically removed it from me. But it is so important that, you know, that people are aware in order, and starting at an early age is so wonderful, because then they have that guidance and that empowerment to be able to protect themselves from those otherworldly things that most people go through
Exactly.
their life with, being oblivious that they're even there. And then, and I mean, even they create pain on people too, some of the attachments. And a lot of times people that wouldn't normally have addiction, they get an attachment that creates pain, and then they, in seeking comfort from the pain, they'll start taking pain pills, and then they become addicted when normally they would not have been addicted, you know. But
Exactly.
and so, you know, it's a vicious cycle. So it really helps people all the way around, and I commend you. I'm a big fan. So I'm one of your big fans now. So it just yeah, absolutely. I really am. I'm proud of you for doing that too. I'm in awe.
Thank
So I'm
you.
glad. But
I think, you know, what I wanted to say about the attachments and things as well. It's so true what you're saying. You have to, so as a healer, you have to so take care of yourself, because you're obviously dealing with people who are in a lot of pain. And whether it's mental pain, spiritual pain, physical pain, emotional pain, and you know, it's almost like you've got to go into the swamp and you've got to help them out and you've got to hold their hand, and you never know what's coming out there with them, right?
that's
So
true.
if you choose that experience to be with them and to work with people on that level, it is your duty to be able to keep your frequency high. You absolutely have to do it. And if you don't, you're going to get sucked in there with them. I've seen way too many people that call themselves healers. You go and see them and they might be fantastic psychics or whatever they might think, but their lives, their personal lives are in shambles. Their finances are in shambles. And I'm not saying that we don't go through bad times, or we don't have to sort out our money issues or whatever. Of course we do. A human being. But as long as you working towards it, as long as you recognize what your shortfalls are, right? And as long as you recognize we all have blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're able to then say, hang on, clearly something's in my blind spot here. You've got to have that awareness, right? To be able to know that there's something in your blind spot. Stop, go within, do the inner work, raise your frequency, because when you raise your frequency, those things can't attach to you anymore. It's that simple. It's like a bird flying high and a crocodile in the swamp trying to munch it. It can't munch it because it's way above there. But if you're going to be hovering around down in the dodgy areas there, of course it can get you. And that's what I'm saying. So it really does. And that for me is what is such a pleasure. And you know, to always see the people that you're working with, in my situation, that's what I do, as a mirror. I was a single mom my whole life, basically. And I attracted so many single moms into my practice. And it was like just the stuff I was going through with my son, you know, like, I'd have a mother come in who's going through exactly this or a similar thing with her child or children. And just her conversation with me helped me through my stuff as well. And that for me, you know, it's like there's the learner, teacher, teacher, learner. Who's the teacher? Who's the learner? Who's the learner? Who's the teacher? It's about understanding. We're always learning from each other, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
what makes it such a joyful experience. And it's, you know, it's like what you're saying, you know, none of us are higher than the other one, really. We are just or as I always love to say, like Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. So it's wonderful, and I love, what we were actually talking about off air just a little bit beforehand, talking about you know your experience with your sister, with your mum, seeing people cross over and leave their body. Tell us a little bit about that. That for me, I mean, I've had similar experiences like that. So it's so beautiful. How was that for you? I mean, how's that experience been for you?
It has also been very beautiful, and I feel so honored to have the opportunity to experience along with the people that are transitioning the beauty of crossing over and for them going back home. As most people are aware, there are 3 different kinds of death. There is a natural death, which most of us usually have. There's sudden death, and there is a near-death experience. And all of them are handled differently from what I've experienced. They're all handled differently on the other side. Focusing on the natural, the death, a lot of times what I've noticed is people in their physical bodies, they're aware that their time is coming, and they'll start talking about, oh, so and so, if will you please take my cat and give it to my sister if something happens to me or whatever, because they know that their time is coming, and a lot of times they pass away the next day. In my mother is a perfect example, and with her, she was actually in hospice. She was going around the facility telling people, I'm going home tomorrow. She wanted to say goodbye and to thank them for their care. And there was one lady in
Wow.
particular that had her dog pass away 3 days earlier. And my mother told the woman, she said, when I cross over, I will take care of your dog for you until you can get there to retrieve the dog from me. And sure enough, she passed away at about 1:30 the next afternoon, which was a very, very a beautiful thing because I got to be there for it. And I was able to connect into it energetically, in a different way than I do with the patients, where I'm seeing the physical body declining, and I am caring for the physical body that's declining, but that I can also see the preparation of the spirits on the other side getting ready to receive. In my mother's case, if you'd like me to tell that story, I'll be happy to.
Please, I'd love to. I'd love to.
Okay.
Yes.
My mother had cancer, and a year before she decided no longer to go through treatment. And so we were going around letting her eat her favorite food every week at her favorite restaurant, and visiting old friends and going places that she hadn't been for a while. But coming forward, as I had mentioned, that she was aware when she was passing, and I was in her room with her that day. My brother was on his way to come, but for some reason he didn't make it in time. And I think that the reason was intended for him not to be there because of all of what I was able to experience being alone in the room with her and not being interrupted. The thing that I've noticed about people when they are actively getting ready to pass is sometimes they will choose to stay embodied until the very last minute. And there are other times that they'll leave early, sometimes even a day or two early, and allow the physical body itself just to finish, and the spirit's already gone.
Wow.
So in my mother's case, she chose to stay until the last minute. And this was obvious because even though she was no longer able to verbalize and she was no longer able to open her eyes, when you would speak to her, she would move her eyebrows up and down and try to mouth words. So she would go, and it was appropriate because people would come in the room and they'd say, "Hi, Phyllis," and she would make that facial expression consistently. So as I'm sitting in the
Wow.
room, I notice the side of the room starting to fill up with a mist, which I've since learned is called ectoplasm. And of course, I could see movement on the other side. I could see sometimes a pant leg stick out or a shoulder stick out. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. You know, if you have your loved ones coming to help you when you're transitioning over, you surely don't want to see your parents naked. So yes, they do show up in clothes. And usually they show up the way that you will remember them the most, or the way that you remember them last, in a healthy state. So like if you've had a parent or somebody that has deteriorated with a disease prior to passing and they're 70 pounds versus 170 pounds, you will remember them in their healthier state of what you remember them
Right.
last is their healthy state. So you're not going to see this skeleton person coming up to you. So as I'm sitting there, I'm holding my mom's hand and stroking her arm, and the the near the head of the bed, the misting started to efface, and in steps my grandmother, my mother's mother. We called her Grandma Girl, and she had her tight curly perm from back in the 80s, and she even presented in glasses. I mean, she looked the exact same as I remembered her. She even had on the little leisure suit that she had made for herself, and all of that. And when she came into the room, she walked over to my mother's bed and started to stroke the inside of her arm. My mom, of course, is sitting at a slant. They always are, because it helps them breathe easier. So she's stroking the inside of my mother's arm, and she leans forward to my mother's ear and says something. And my mother immediately starts doing the eyebrow and mouthing thing in response to my grandmother. And the thing is that when people get closer to death, as children are born without filters and they build up over time, those filters start to efface as you get closer to death. So you are then able
Yes.
to hear the telepathy from the spirit world, as well as you are still in the physical world and can hear the people that are embodied speaking. So my mother could hear her mother speaking to her, and my grandmother did this 3 different times, where she would lean forward and come away, and my mother would respond. And then I see this frantic wave behind my grandmother's head, and it was my beautiful sister Robin. She had been murdered by a jealous boyfriend in the 80s, before stalking laws were even in place for men doing that sort of thing. And the whole room just filled with her perfume. She had a unique fragrance that she wore back in the 80s, and it just filled the room. And she came around from the misting of the people. She came over to me. She embraced me. I was sitting down at that point. I could feel her hair falling over my face. I could feel her essence. It was so beautiful. I could smell her. And then she went back around, and the whole misting had effaced. I could see into the other side, and this beautiful reception that they had prepared for my mother. And there were hundreds of people there, hundreds. There were angels there. There were, and I say this because so many people, you know, it's kind of like that division of Hatfields and the McCoys, we call them in the United States, where you're either galactically inclined and you're born of the aliens, or you are spiritually inclined and you come from God, the source. And this is where it all kinds of enmeshes together. Not only were there angels, there were these beautiful, just magnificent beings that radiated the same love and beauty that the angels did. And really, most all of the people over there radiated such a love and joy. But they were very, very tall, and their heads, the 10-foot ceilings, like came at the top of their eyebrow, and they had this luminous white hair, beautiful, like lavender blue colored eyes and blue eyes, and they appeared to be from somewhere else. And I'm saying that because if you want to take it from a scientific angle, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So in the sky, there are so many stars that could be sunshines to other solar systems with planets similar to ours. And it would be very ignorant on our parts to think that we are the only ones in the whole
Right.
universe. So
Exactly.
when those beings finish out their lifetimes on their planets, they have to go somewhere too. And so that is why these beautiful beings that appear to be from somewhere else are also there, which kind of brings the galactic together with the spiritual. And I don't mean that the ones that look like bugs are there. You know, they actually are go somewhere else. They do go somewhere, but they go somewhere else. They don't go up into the same dimensions when they finish from what I understand, but I didn't see
Right.
anything like that. It was just these beautiful, just magnificent. I don't know if they were male or female. It didn't matter. They were just gorgeous, just gorgeous. I mean, and the feeling of the love and elation that comes from that other side, you just can't help but smile. I mean, there's no words that you can verbalize to describe it. There's no feeling that we have that can touch it. It just is encompassing. And so I said to my mom, I got up, I kissed her, I told her, I said, Mom, I'm going to be fine. It's time for you to go home. Grandma and Robin are here to help you. And she, of course, mouthed and did the eyebrow thing. And I said, you know, we will see each other again. You know, I'll know that you're around me. We had actually made a pact before she died of something that I'll share with you too, if you want later. But so I told her, you know, that I would know when she was around. And she literally took her breath about 10 minutes later. But the thing is that I'm sitting in this chair, and when you are in the presence of all of this magnificence, you know, you can't help but smile. And at one point, I'm looking at my mother's side of her bed, and there was a group of spirits that kind of congregated at the head of her bed that kind of huddled around one another, like we have a game called football here, but it's not like soccer where they huddle together to make their plan for the game. And they were huddling together, and when they opened up, my mother's spirit was standing in the center as if they were trying to stabilize her spiritual feet. And as my mother's standing there, she's just beaming, and I'm beaming. You know, to me, I mean, my mother's not dead. She's standing right there. But when I looked over and noticed that she had stopped breathing, I thought about how odd it would look to a nurse to walk into the room and my mother's just died and I'm sitting there smiling. You know, that's not a normal response. They would probably think that I did something to her, you know. So I called the nurse. I you know, took in my joy for that little bit. I called the nurse. The nurse came in and, of course, pronounced that she was gone. And I said, can I please, you know, stay in the room with my mother? And she said, of course, because I wanted to see. They were still, the spirits were still in there. I mean, they were in there for a good 20 minutes, our time, because one by one, they were coming up and they were greeting my mother. And the thing is several of the people on the other side I recognized from this lifetime. People, cousins that had passed away, people that had passed, of course, my sister, you know, that had passed away ahead. And there were a lot of people that I didn't, but my mother knew who they were. You know, she was familiar with them. So they were coming up and they were greeting her, and the room kind of started to thin out. And as it did, the way that I see spirits is I can see them very, very clearly, like I can see you out of my peripheral vision. When they're a distance away from me, it reminds me of like when we as humans were, it's the sun's out and we're going into a store with a large plate glass window, the reflection of ourselves is kind of opaque. That's how I see ghosts. They look like that to me. They're kind of solid, but yet kind of see-through, like what we would see in a reflection. And when they're close up to me, very, very close, I see an energetic waffling to the air, like gas fumes, or like a hot road, vapors coming off of a hot road, of that waffling to the air. So when it was time for my mother to be walked out, my sister and my grandmother were with her. There were angels with her. There's beautiful beings were with her. There was one other soul that was there, but and unfortunately that one was kind of trumped out by the beauty of the other ones. It was someone else that was with my mother. And as they started to file out past me, they all made connection with my head, which was beautiful because it was very tingly and very, very loving. And my mother started to approach. My mother had beautiful legs, and she was still in her patient gown. And I recognized her because she was getting close, so I could see the waffling on top, but I could see her legs. So I knew it was her with her pretty legs. And she connected, and then they left. And I just sat there in awe of the moment and just the feeling of the energy charge that I received, and it was almost a glittery feeling. I mean, I don't know, again, there's no words to really describe it, but after seeing that in that much detail, I thought that I could bring a lot of comfort to people, especially in my field of work with which is why I became a death doula, because I realized that there's so, in that moment, seeing it in that detail, there's even more to it than I ever even realized. So, again, being a nurse for many, many years, I've seen a lot of people pass away. And if you'd like me to share some of the things I've experienced with that, I'll be happy to do that as well.
I would love to hear about that, because especially when you're in that environment where it's not always, people aren't always as aware, for example, as what you are and your mom was as well. It's beautiful. I too have experienced some amazing experiences with loved ones crossing over. The story I will probably most often told on this channel was my fiance, who was killed in a hijacking as we call it here.
Oh.
And it was very traumatic, because he was a foreigner, he was an Austrian, and I was his next of kin, so I had to go and identify his body.
Oh.
And it was just crazy when, they had this like glass window with this ugly pale blue curtain, right? And I was standing there, I had no idea what to expect. And the next minute, boosh, this curtain is just pulled open, and there he was lying on this bed. And it was just crazy. I was just like freaking out, And although I absolutely knew, he knew he would never reach the age of 30. We were both 29 at the time. He knew he'd never reach the age of 30. We spoke about it a lot. Exactly the same thing. He'd started seeing earthbound spirits, and he'd started seeing through the veils at least 3 months before he crossed over. And he said to me, and we'd actually finally, after 7 years, we had set a wedding date, which was going to be 6 months down the line, right? But by the same token, he actually looked at me and he said to me, we'll never get married, don't you? I said, yeah, I actually do. He says, but I'll always be there to tell you what happened, and I'll always come back when you need me. And it was like that. And that was the Monday night. That was the last time I saw him. In the early hours of the Wednesday morning, that's when and I woke up with a gunshot going off in my room, sleep. And I still jumped out of bed. I said, what the hell? Who's firing? And I jumped and I ripped my curtains open, and I went, okay. And then obviously when it all came to pass, and then I knew what time he'd crossed, because I could see the time on my alarm clock. And but I remember then being in the mortuary and just freaking out, just seeing this, because they'd shot him execution style. And I just stood there, and his voice, as clear as crystal, was right there. He said to me, I'm right here. Just remember, that's only my body. I'm right here. And in that moment, I felt his presence so strong. And it was like all that raw pain, that feeling of being ripped and shredded apart, just dissipated. And I felt at ease in a way that I'd not felt at ease before. And it was amazing, because I felt him so strong after that. He'd come and visit me in dreams. I remembered him coming to me in dreams, bringing me grocery packets, and I'd forgotten to eat. And he'd say, you need to go shopping, and this is what you need. And he would show me in the grocery packets what I needed to buy, because, I was just not feeding myself for a while. And it's quite amazing, and I always say, he died for me, because had it not been him leaving at the time that he did, I would not be doing the work I'm doing today. His death was the catalyst for me to do this. I was born with a gift, but for many years, I kind of put it in abeyance, because, and in my early 20s, I started studying it again. I started studying things like astrology, palmistry, tarot, numerology, you name it, because my grandmother was like that. So it was nothing strange in our household, right? But I just wanted to find a way. And he was there all the time. He was encouraging me to find my path, when at that stage. But what was really amazing was that after he crossed, it was like, for me, And the thing that was most significant in my mind was, if today is my last day on earth, or if I knew today was my last day on earth, or if I knew someone I loved, it was their last day on earth, how would I want it to be? And that was the thing that inspired me to do the work I did. And it's because of that I've started doing what I do. It really is. I met the guy that shot him. I went to see him in jail. I spoke to him. I made my peace. It was just amazing. And the minute I made my peace, it was like my life just changed. And I'm not saying I wasn't sad or had my moments. Yes, for the next 5 years, rest assured, I did this because in my humanness, I missed him a lot. But it was amazing because every time we have these types of conversations, it's like, that's the thing that inspired me to do what I do. And over time, I've been able to talk to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people about death, living the gift of death, because if we choose it, death can be a beautiful gift for us, because death is never about the ones that actually leave. They go back home, right?
Yes.
It's about those of us who stay behind, and we've got to overcome that loss, and we've got to turn that loss into a gain.
Absolutely.
A spiritual gain.
That is so beautiful. The way that you put it is absolutely so beautiful. And you're right. And, the thing that people also, in addition to what you said, need to realize is that we don't die. We simply shed our skin and go. And the grieving sometimes kind of holds them half here. Not that it holds them here because they can be 6 places simultaneously, but it kind of keeps pulling them back. And it's so important that the grief also holds the person in a state where they are not moving forward, and the spirits really want you to move forward. But if you could imagine them going on a vacation to the most magnificent place that you can even imagine, and they're going to get to go and live there for a while, and that you eventually will see them again. You'll see your animals again. They cross over too. You'll see your loved ones again. And you might get more than you bargained for too, because not only do you get to see the pets from this lifetime, don't be surprised if maybe you had a white buffalo or an ostrich and another one that comes bounding up to say hello and hug you too. So,
and you remember them all, right? Yeah, absolutely.
And you do. You remember all of them and their names in that time, because all of the veils and things have been lifted that kind of hold you here in this bodily mentality. And so if you could think of it in that way, I mean, who wouldn't want to wish someone off on a beautiful vacation to the most amazing place, and where they can be healthy and no pain and that sort of thing, and understanding that they're not really gone, they're not dead, that we've been taught through many things, including traditional religion, that there's such a finality to death. It's only a finality to the physical body. And granted, like Chantel said also, you still have your moments. Yes, you're going to miss them in a physical way because you're in a physical body. And it's, even though you're still connected with them and you still feel them around, there's still those moments, that you miss their embrace, or you miss, the way that they used to cook something or whatever, and they're no longer here to do that for you. But but if you can open yourself and your energy, and some of the teachings that Chantel has mentioned too, that she's talked about with the energy and things like that, and you're able to open yourself, you're able to communicate with them on the other side. I know with myself, my mother comes through like a megaphone a lot of times. And I remember one time in particular, I said to her, I said, Mom, don't you ever miss, my mother had special recipes for some of these brownies that she used to make. And there were salads that she used to make that she just, I don't know what she did, but they were just really, really delicious. And I said to her, I said, don't you ever miss, the brownies that you used to make, or the potato salad that you used to make? And she comes through like a megaphone and she says, we don't eat here. And I said, yes, I know that. I know you don't eat there. And she says, but we do everything by thought. She said, for instance, if we want to go somewhere, we think of it and we're instantaneously there. We just immediately travel. And she said, when it comes to food, because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to miss eating, spaghetti, or I'm going to miss eating, my broccoli with cheese or whatever. When they cross over, my mother explained that because the mind is so strong and thought is so strong, that all you have to do is think of the food item that you had here or on another planet for that matter. Your favorite food might be from somewhere else. That all you have to do is think about it, and it comes to you in the memory recall as if you are eating it. So you get the flavor
Exactly.
and the sensation of eating it without actually eating the food. And I'm like, wow, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing with ice cream? You could eat as much as you want, and you don't have the calories. So, there are so many things that you still can learn from them. And not only that, if we have time to share this part, do we have a little bit of time? I wanted to.
Yeah, we can definitely carry on. Yeah, please.
Okay. My mother and I, before she passed away, we made a pact. And not that the person still has to be alive for you to make the pact, because they can hear you the same as Chantel and I are talking. They can hear you the same way. They keep all of their senses. Some people mention, well, how can they smell? They don't have an olfactory nerve. Again, as the taste, the smell is a memory recall. So yes, they can smell certain things. And that goes with people that have crossed over or not. So a lot of times you'll see souls around that have been alcoholics, maybe hovering in a pub wanting to smell somebody's drink. But anyway, the other direction, I just got myself off track here. Oh, my mother and I, we made a pact. My mother had very, very long, beautiful, white, pearlescent, wavy hair. And all of us are brunettes in the family. And I said to her, I said, Mom, sometimes life is so stressful. And, I want to know when you come to visit that you're really there. I need something physical to assure me that you're there. And so we agreed that she would leave one of her hairs, because they can do that. They can move feathers. They can move certain things that are very lightweight very easily. And so she did. So after she passed away, the day of her memorial, I drew a bath, and I put some bubbles and some salts in there. And I come to get into the bath, and there's a long hair laying lengthwise on top of the bubbles of one of my mother's hairs. And, granted, I was in her house and that hair could have gotten there, but it was laid on the top. But there was a time after that, and I'm still finding her hairs. My mom's been gone for 8 years. I've moved twice. I have a different car. She's never been in the houses. And even we just had a holiday called Thanksgiving, which is an American holiday. But when we have our dinner, I found one of her hairs laying lengthwise across the seat of one of the chairs. And I kid you not. But there was a time before this that I couldn't dispute, because I had gone back to school to further my education later in life as a nurse to further my degree. And I had a class, I was having a test that day, and I hadn't done so great on the first test, and I really had to pass this one or I wouldn't pass the class. So I went to the school bookstore and I picked out a 3-ring binder out of thousands of binders in multiple colors. I picked out this binder. I never looked inside of it. I picked it out. I picked out the loose leaf papers that I was supposed to have to go inside of the binder, went to the register, paid for my items, went to my car, went straight to the school, went to my classroom, and I sit down at my desk. And I'm just fretting over this test. And I'm like, oh man, I still don't feel prepared. I was going through some personal things at the time. But anyway, so I sit down at the desk and I open this 3-ring binder. And in the center ring, in the teeth of that 3-ring binder, looped in the teeth, was one of my mother's white hairs. And there is no way, I mean, that could have gotten there. And even if it was some kind of a fluke, it brought comfort to me in that moment, because I felt her there. And of course I did well on the test. So they can do that. And usually, you want to be specific and not change it. My sister, who passed away, and she left her body about 35 or 40 minutes early. I saw her come out, and she met with my brother, who was waiting there to meet her. My family, I'm the last one left in my immediate family, and the other 5 are on the other side. So anyway, I saw her leave, but she leaves feathers. My sister owned an aviary. She had exotic birds. She had African grays. She had conjures. She had the beautiful, colorful parrots. I can't remember what they're called right now. She had cockatiels and cockatoos and all kinds of things. And I'm finding feathers, but they're not just feathers. They're colorful bird feathers that aren't even flying around my house, or outside even. And of course I find the feathers outside too, but I know, and she also comes with the dragonflies. So we have these little dragonfly things that fly and flitzen and land on the flowers. So she comes in with the dragonflies and she leaves me flowers, and I'll be walking through my house and there'll be a feather on the floor right in the middle of the hallway, and I'm like, well, gee, where did that come from? And I pick it up and I say, hi, Lisa, and I know that she's there in that moment, and I can feel her joy at me finding it. And so they can do that. And even if it's a picture of something, if you pick a ladybug with your person to have that be your, whenever you see a ladybug that they're connecting with you, or squirrels or something, it can even be you opening up a magazine and seeing a picture of a ladybug. Or even, you would be surprised, you'd be finding them in the wintertime crawling in your windowsill, and they're not even supposed to be around at that time. So you will find them in different ways, and it means that they're connecting in with you in a more physical way, so that you know that they are present with you.
I fully agree with that. There's always going to be signs, and that's the beauty, is that they do give us signs, no matter how long ago it's been, and no matter how far away they may seem, they're always the signs. And as you say, it's going to be a flower, maybe, like, you'll kind of see their favorite flower just pop up, or you might even have a delivery of flowers from a friend that's their favorite flowers,
Exactly.
that sort of thing. As you say, you could find a hair, and smells. I find the smells, like the perfume or the smell, just like a split second often. And I go, oh, hi, Or, I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know my late fiance, he loved that coffee, and he used to brew coffee in the morning. And I mean, I love the smell of coffee being brewed. But for many, many times, I'd wake up in the morning, walk into the kitchen, and just for a few seconds, I would get that delicious smell of coffee, and I don't brew it. There was no coffee in sight, I drink tea. But just that, hello, good morning, how are you? That sort of feeling. So there's so many ways, that they let us know they have never left us. And it's really just moving out of the body into the spirit. And I always say, when they're in the spiritual realm, they can be of so much more assistance to us than what they can oftentimes be in the physical realm. So, yes, it is an adjustment. Of course, it's an adjustment. We're human beings. We like to touch. We like to smell, We like to be with that person. We want to be traveling on holiday and da-da-da. And yes, it is an adjustment to know that they're no longer in the flesh, but rather in spirit. But at the end of the day, when we accept that, and that's their choice, and we can respect that for whatever the reasons are, no matter how they left. I mean, wow. I mean, my best friend, her partner, my birthday's on the 10th of February. She's on the 17th. And now, like 2 weeks ago, her boyfriend shot himself in her driveway on her birthday. So that was such a shock. But thank God she's a very awakened soul as well, and she's just working through it like a pro. And we talk, and he's now finally starting to come through, for her and that sort of stuff. But it's amazing. Something like that has the ability to change you in that split second. Life changes within that split second. So we have a choice. What are we going to do? Are we going to sink, or are we going to swim? And I must say, my older sister, when I had my experience, and she's an astrologer, she's a brilliant astrologer. And she said to me at the time, Chantal, you can either become South Africa's white Winnie Mandela. Now, Winnie Mandela was Nelson Mandela's wife, and when he was in jail, she became extremely violent. she did what they call the necklacing, right? Where she would like put a tire around people's necks, douse them with petrol and set them alight. That was how violent it was, yeah. Or she said, you can choose to spiritually ascend in a way and gain spiritual gifts like you've never gathered before. And I, of course, chose the latter. I'll never forget that. And I said, no, I definitely don't want to become violent. I want to grow. I want to heal. I want to expand through this. So we can, and again, especially when there's stuff like suicide. Suicide is a very challenging one to deal with, as well, especially when it's a violent suicide as well, but really we, to respect that person, that was the way they chose to leave the earth, no matter what the circumstances, etc. That was still their choice. And for people to say, well, they're going to hell now because God does not condone suicide, is the biggest nonsense I've ever come across in my life, because thankfully I am able to see into the spiritual realm as well. And I'll tell you, every person that I know that has taken their own life consciously, because at the end of the day, what's worse, to take a gun and put it to your head or smoke yourself to death over 20 years? Like, really, you're still doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And every person that has done that I've dealt with, they are at ease. It might take the spirit a little while longer to settle in and be okay, because oftentimes, yes, there is regret when they leave the earth plane, especially when it's done in a moment of a knee-jerk reaction and a moment of anger. But sometimes it's completely pre-planned. It's pre-thought, So we have the whole thing is just not to judge these situations and just surround them with love, and whatever it is that we need to do to heal through these situations, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. What you say is so true. They do not go to hell. I totally agree with that. And people have to understand too that with suicide, things are looked at differently on the other side. Like, for instance, if someone commits suicide for medical purposes, it's totally looked at differently, because their time is coming to an end anyway, and they're not, it's not stressful. They have their reception. People with sudden death, which suicide is also considered a form of sudden death, a lot of times one main soul will be sent in first to help collect them, because having the reception brought on that they do get after the fact with the sudden death, it would be overwhelming, especially if they're standing there trying to bargain with God to crawl back in their body for one more breath because they left their tea on the stove burning and they're worried about their dog in the house burning down. So, so they're bargaining. And at that point, if you were to bring on the whole reception, they would probably run off in the other direction saying, no, I'm not ready yet. So they have to come to a point where they've accepted the fact that they have passed, and that they then can continue over and receive all of the good things. And with suicide too, when it is done and it's premeditated with like a mental illness, for instance, that is considered too, the suffering that the person is going through, and perhaps they even have attachments or something that has derailed them on their path, and it's impossible for them on their own to get through. So all of that is taken into consideration. And I agree too with Chantel, where if it's a knee-jerk kind of thing, that is seen as a little bit selfish, on the other side, because it does create kind of a rippling effect. But they too they do get even a form of schooling. They do get some of the things, but they also have to settle in and take responsibility and understand that they've died as well. But they do not go to hell. They do not. So that is, I concur with Chantel on that one. So.
It's true, because I think if we think of the human psyche, we hold on to life at all cost. Mostly we fight to live, right? I mean, if we're going to defend ourselves when we're in dangerous situations, etc., we're always going to fight to live. Look at how we do that. And the way I look at these things is that when someone actually takes a gun to their head or overdoses or whatever, hangs themselves or whatever the case might be, it's almost like what I observed. There's a switch in the mind that something has made them switch off or switch on, whichever way you choose to look at it, where they just don't care anymore. They just don't want to be here. Something, it's usually trauma that has taken them there, sort of trauma that is, and as you say, what I've observed a lot in these situations is attachments. There's entities and attachments that have this kind of niggling. And yes, they've obviously been of that vibration where that attachment is able to connect. But at the end of the day, who am I to judge? Who are we to judge about that? That is their path.
Right.
They need, and as you say, they need to take responsibility. And often they will sit in a place of silence, and they almost like go to like a spiritual hospital, if you will, the way that we can put it, said is a spiritual hospital, where they receive a lot of love, a lot of comfort, a lot of it's okay, but this is what it is. And, you can sort of see what that's done. And yes, that spirit does have to take, that soul does have to take responsibility, absolutely. But I think it's also for the ones that are left behind. Now, how do we deal with this situation? Does it make us sink or does it make us swim? It's always a two-way street, I think, when it comes to these situations. Yeah. What do you think?
That is so true. With natural death, it's expected, but when sudden death or suicide occurs, it's a huge shock to the people that are being left behind, because there are so many questions of did I do something? If I had done something different, would the outcome have been different? And it really creates a situation where they have to reflect into themselves, and hopefully they do take that and grow, with that. And so, suicide is always an interesting subject, because people have a lot of questions about it, because they've been conditioned to it being one way, and it's not. It's very, very different. And like Chantel said, yes, they do. They go through a nurturing period, and then they also, they continue on in their schooling. They do their life reviews and all of that sort of thing too. And so, but yes, it's not that you should go out and commit suicide. We're not encouraging that you do that. We're not trying to make it that it's this beautiful thing, because you're obviously here for a reason. And who knows, you might be the parent of the child coming in to cure cancer. And if you decide to exit early, that child doesn't get to come through. So we have to honor some of the agreements that we've had with others to help them be successful, while they're also helping us be successful. So please don't just go out and, think that it's okay to do, because you're here for a reason, and you're important to be here. And all of the elements and what you have to offer are necessary to be here. So absolutely.
I just have one or two questions in the chat here, and I'm going to start with Carol Custer. I'd love for you to give me your opinion on this. How does it work if you reincarnate right away? Will they still be there? Interesting question. What do you say about that?
Okay, your question is what will happen if you reincarnate right away?
How does it work if you reincarnate right away? Will they still be there?
Will they still be here on the earth or on the other side? I'm not sure which way.
I think she means probably still here on Earth, right? I think she probably means still here on Earth.
Yes, in the sense, but reincarnation, what we consider right away and what is considered right away on the other side are two different things. You do have to go through a process. You're not just taken out and thrown back in. You do have to go through a process of life review. You do, if you have any healing and nurturing time, like hospitalization is an excellent word that Chantel used for it. You go through that. If you have any schooling that you need to go through, you go through that. Sometimes if a person has an addiction that if they've chosen to cross over, because again, at the time of death, you can choose to cross over or not. And the ones that choose not to cross over, usually the ones haunting people's houses and attaching to people. But the ones that have crossed over, say with addiction, for instance, they oftentimes, even in that schooling, are placed with a family member that may have the same affliction in order to try to guide that person to overcome it, since the person guiding them wasn't able to overcome it in their lifetime. And they get credit for that if they help the person overcome it. But And with those skills and those tools that you've now obtained, then you're sent back in. So it's not like you die and then the very next moment you're being birthed.
You can come back in again.
Right. There is a gap of time. And since the
Yes.
time on the other side is timeless and the time over here is linear, I mean, there could be anywhere from a 2-year to a 10-year gap or 20-year gap before you're sent back in. And, you know, people will be different. They'll be older. Some may have passed away, you know, so it would be different. And usually you're placed in a similar situation as close as they can get it to what you were in. But I know myself, I've seen a couple of people that have had, well, my boyfriend, for instance, his mother passed away, but one of his nieces had a little girl recently that looks just like his mother, and I can feel her spirit. So I know that it's his mother reincarnated, even though she's been gone for 11 years. So
yes.
I don't have any grandchildren yet. I've got 3 kids, and they need to, you know, whenever I'm hoping that they take the time to find a good partner first, because that's important. But when they do start to have children, I kind of expect to see some of my relatives coming back through as well. And a lot of times you'll know who they are. So if you're in tune to that sort of thing, but that's kind of how that works. I hope that explains it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, they don't necessarily have to come back into the same, you're not, obviously they're going to come back in a different body. Yes. So you're not necessarily going to recognize them unless you're in tune like you are. I mean, there definitely are people that have come back and I'm going, I know who you are, you know, and you just have that kinship and, you know, you can feel it for sure. But it's not, there's no hard, fast rules around that, Carol. You know, and also when the soul is ready to come back, that soul has to go through that place of purification, learning. You know, they kind of watch a movie of their life on earth, where they went wrong, where they missed the guidelines, you know, that sort of stuff. And we all do. So we go through that. And mostly what I'm hearing as well, they don't want to come back. Earth is a tough place to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when we return home, we're seen as heroes if we have completed this lifetime here, because it is tough. Talk about hell. Hell is on earth. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, it's a big deal when we return. We're greeted very graciously and actually, you know, praised for our heroism for coming here.
Absolutely. Okay, Cindy Kristen, is a person dead if they're in a vegetative state? Their soul's still inside. What's your take on that? If they're kind of like in a hospital, I guess, in a coma?
No, usually the people with the coma, the soul leaves the body to kind of do their thing, and they're usually tinkering around, you know, up doing other things. Sometimes the soul that comes back in isn't the same one. Sometimes they switch out. That can happen as well, but usually the body is kind of doing, as I mentioned, that sometimes the soul waits until the last minute, sometimes it leaves early. In the state of a coma, the body's left there for it to have the choice to come back into or not, because sometimes you do cross over briefly to get something that you need, maybe a little bit of schooling, and then you come back in with that knowledge of that, kind of like near-death experience. It's similar that way, if that makes sense. Yeah. So they're kind of left with the vessel for either them to return to or a spirit to return to, for that matter. So yeah. No, the soul returns back into the body. And a lot of times too, people with comatose, I was talking to somebody just the other day who was a friend of mine in high school that had a terrible auto accident, and he was in a comatose in the intensive care unit for 2 weeks. And he was talking about how he remembered his body, his soul hovering over his body, and how he was turning around and looking at it. So it is very, very similar to a near-death experience, but sometimes it's months before you come back in versus, you know, days or hours before you return back in.
Exactly. And again, that would also be, you know, a lesson. I see everything as a lesson and a purpose for whatever that body and soul need to experience through that, or need to learn through that experience, is all very individual. Yeah.
Right. And there's a good chance too that that person's soul is standing right next to you while you're standing there looking at their body that's comatose too. So, you might feel them around, spiritually
Yeah.
as well. They're not anchored, they're free to move around.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's no soul, Cindy. So brain dead means no soul. It's not that there's no soul. It's exactly what Lynn is saying now. It's just that they're not anchored in there. They can be moving around, doing their own thing, coming and going, checking what's happening. So it's not to say there is no soul, but also let's remember there are no hard and fast rules around this. Every person is so unique in their experience that they're going to experience it differently. But it's not that there's no soul. It's just that soul can be, as Lynn says, tinkering around.
It is.
Like
And the soul is the energy part of it anyway. And again, it can't be created or destroyed. It can evolve into other things. And so their soul lives forever. It's never, ever dead or destroyed or gone, ever. So, with that understanding, hopefully that helps a little bit too.
Indeed. Just another question. I don't know if you can answer this, Lynn. This is from Corrie. My husband died last April. I'm sorry for your loss. That's quite recent. Too. What happened right after death? I think that would depend on the individual, but I'm not sure what death he had. What would you say? What happens right after death, Lynn?
Well, and again, it depends on whether it is a natural death, which we expect and we graduate into, like if he had cancer or some terminal disease that took his life, and you had your time to go through the steps with the person as they transitioned towards death. Sudden death is handled differently. Because it's the way that the spirit itself reacts, and the shock of being just catapulted, out of the body unexpectedly. And, they're still in their mindset of they're driving their minivan and their kids to school, and they don't realize maybe that they've been in an accident until they are there seeing the ambulance come and they can see their body laying there type thing, and they're bargaining. So each thing it's handled differently that way. But once they get past the part where they've acknowledged death, they go through a period, like Chantel said, of nurturing love, hospitalization almost type thing, to help them heal some of their mental illness and things like that. Then they move forward into their life review. Like Chantel also said, it's like a big movie theater. In that moment, you are judging yourself. You are not judged. And that's another thing that's important for people to understand too, that we judge ourselves in that moment. So you are actually placed in the shoes of anybody that you did something good for, and you get to do the feel good, or that you've done something negative to, and you get to feel the feel bad that you created for them and see the rippling effect of that. And then you go forward with any kind of education, or any kind, in the case of somebody that's incarnated versus reincarnated, they kind of go through a what is the word? They go through a reconditioning kind of thing after going through the shock of life. And recently there was an author called Danny and Brinkley that has had multiple death experiences. He was struck by lightning twice, and he was talking about his most recent near-death experience, that when he came back, everybody noticed that he was hugging people more. And they're like, Danny, and you've become such a hugger. And he says, well, that's because when I get on the other side, all of the hugs and the feel goods that I've given to people, I get to feel that on the other side when I go back there. So
that's called true karma. That's the karma, right? That's where we experience the karma of the life we've lived. Absolutely.
That's true. Absolutely. So hug more, smile more, love more. Don't sweat the little things, the stuff that's not important. Choose your battles. Some things just aren't worth it and important. And I think that all of us are feeling the shift in the energy right now. We're transitioning dimensions right now, and there are some shocking things are coming up, but all of it justifies the means, and it's going to end up to be something wonderful for the collective. So, yeah. be patient with yourself. You might find yourself a little bit more tired, but it's because some of the things are changing.
Absolutely, it is. It's quite a crazy time right now. There's definitely so many shifts in the timelines, and I think the separation between the choices of going light or going dark, literally, are, and it's almost like a bottleneck. We in experiences now that many of us had never thought that we would experience. But Corey, what you're saying? Okay, he had a heart attack, so that's quite an extreme. It's quite a immediate sort of maybe a shock. I also say, what I see in these types of situations is, where are people at spiritually? If you believe that you're moving to a better place or you're going back to your creator, whatever, invariably you will often go there. That's where you go. I've also come across, because I've also in my time seen a lot of earthbound spirits. It's like they really don't even know they're dead.
That's true.
There was an old man who sat sleeping, and he was in his chair, and he fell asleep and he just never woke up, right? So pretty much died in his chair, and he still believed he was in this chair and getting very, very frustrated because no one could see him anymore. And that's when he became angry and started knocking things around the kitchen. And that's like haunting. That's what we call the spirits that haunt. And what I would often do is help them across. I would show them the light, and very often they have their angels there, their family members that have crossed over, and they are there waiting for them. And these family members and these angels and spirit guides and things like that, they will take them across. And there's no question around that. Every time we hear about people, who die and who leave us, they are generally in the hands of some much greater power and much more beautiful power than we can ever imagine. Charmaine, I so hope, that what Charmaine is saying is, so hopefully my mother will not reincarnate into someone I know. She made my life a living hell and had me in SRA. I'm still trying to forgive her. I understand that is something really, really challenging to go through. And I pray for you that you do forgive her, because forgiveness is not about her. It's about you. It's about you not holding on to that hell that she put you through. And I know it might sound easy from someone, coming from someone like me, but I do know that to be true. So
Yep. And I back Chantel up on that. And also, her being that way with you may have helped you to meet a lot of karma in this lifetime and overcome it that normally you wouldn't. And you never know. You might have been her mother in the past life that was the one that was not so great. And we do choose our parents when we come in, and not that I'm trying to take away from what you've been through. I'm so sorry to hear that. However, if you can look at it in a different way, that yes, we chose our parents for a specific reason, and that we don't know what karma we had with them that we're meeting by going through some of the things that we go through. And if you can try to look at it in a way that your mother may have even sacrificed her lifetime to be the way that she was to help you evolve, if you could look at it in a loving way, it might help to bring some comfort and some closure and some healing for you, to realize that it wasn't being done on purpose.
Chances are she probably went through SRA herself.
Yes.
And it is, it's such a crazy experience to go through. And I understand that, as you say, you are having flashbacks, making life so hard. I think, it's such a process to get there and to go through that. But once we choose that healing, it's always available to us. This much I do know. Yeah. Lynn, it's been such a pleasure having you, and I will definitely have you back very soon again. I think there's so much that we can talk about on these topics, and many others as well.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you're my new beautiful friend. So yeah, definitely. I'm so
I feel the same way. It's such a nice sisterhood here.
Yes.
And I really appreciate your knowledge. I love it. I wanted to ask you, did you know of a guy called Dr. Michael Newton?
No.
Dr. Michael Newton, you must get his book called
Okay.
Journey of Souls
I'm writing it
and
down.
Destiny of Souls. What he does, and he's an American guy, he's passed away now. But he wrote a book, as I said, Journey of Souls. And that book came to me. It wasn't even available in South Africa yet. My friend went on holiday to America just after Hannes was murdered. And she
Oh,
brought it
wow.
back to me. And he was a psychiatrist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he did traditional hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And purely by accident, one of his patients was in constant depression, right? And he then hypnotized her. And accidentally, she took him into the spirit world. So, in other words, life between lives. So, what happens when we die and before we reincarnate again? It is the most fascinating book anyone has ever written. There'll be lots of people that will talk about, Brian, whatever, I can't remember his name, this, that, and that. But he takes us into the spirit world and beyond. So your soul groups, your life choices, what happens once you die, what happens before you come back, how you actually sit with your soul team and you actually sit with a group and you decide what it is you're choosing. That book gave me the most incredible insight. Every cell in my body went like when I read that book. And as I said, that was many years ago
Well,
after
I
Hannes
will.
passed away.
Yeah, I will definitely look it up, but I'm going to buy your book for children first because I want a copy of it so that I can show it off to people. And, when people reach out, what would be a good book for children? This one, this one. So
Thank
definitely
you
it's
so much.
good. I want it in my hand. So I will order it from Amazon. I'm sorry that they don't pay well, but it's probably the least. I mean, it would for you to send me one from Africa would cost like probably $45.
I know it's like, and that's why we don't even have I'm actually now just starting to print Caleb's book here, but it's ridiculous to order anything from overseas because I think I'm paying $50 just on postage, and I mean
Yes,
that is
exactly.
like a
That's right.
ridiculous amount I
It
need to
is.
postage.
So,
But
but
anyway.
I will get it from Amazon, and I will have a copy of it the next time we speak, hopefully, because I'm going to do it as soon as we step off from this, and after I speak to you for a few minutes afterwards as well about the feature author thing. So,
Indeed, that'll be awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I love this conversation, Lynn. Is there anything you'd like to say just before in ending, just before we bid each other farewell?
Yes. Don't forget to subscribe and to give this a thumbs way, way up. Your comments count the algorithm, so please chit chat away and leave comments in the thing. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of me, again, my website is www.lynn, L-Y-N-N, Monet, like the painter, MONET.com. That's lynnmonet.com. And you can get a hold of me there and buy my books. So
Yeah,
thank you all so much
absolutely.
for coming and listening and watching. And we appreciate
Lynn's information it's in the chat. I've just left the website there as well, www.lynnmonet.com. Fascinating lady and very chuffed to have you. Yeah. Okay, everybody, I shall see you very soon again. I'll be back on Wednesday with you all. And then, we have whatever we do on Wednesday. I can't even remember offhand. But Lynn, it's been so great chatting to you, and I'll be having a chat with you off air now. So take care, everybody. God bless you all, and I wish you health, wealth, and all the abundance you can possibly imagine. Take care. And again, thank you so much to our amazing Patreons. I really appreciate you guys. God bless you all. Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever in the beautiful world you are. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa with me, Chantal, your hostess with the mostest awesome guests and viewers. As again, today dictates, and yes, I know I'm looking very glitzy and shiny today. The sun is shining right on me. It's that time in the morning. So, no, I'm not changing colors. It's the sun. In case I get some weird questions. Not impossible on this channel, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow. I have with me again the gorgeous Rachel Vaughan. I know we've kind of missed each other but the last few months, but we're back in action having wonderful conversations again. And today we're going to talk about, let me just make sure I get this right, heterochromia, which is a condition of the iris of the eye. Um, and yeah, according to what the Hindus are talking about, and Rachel's absolutely going to go into more detail with that. It's the coloring of the eye and how that connects to your psychic abilities and your ability to see beyond the realms. Super, super fascinating. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about ley lines and cryptids in Australia. Yay. Rachel, how are you? And welcome. It's so good to see you again.
Well, thank you for having me back, Darlin. And yes, emails are an issue. Lovely to be here. Lovely to see you again. And yes, central heterochromia is a fascinating topic. So it's really interesting. I learnt this from my cousin Doug McIntyre. And as I mentioned before, he's on Twitter, allegedly live.com. And he's obviously got a website as well. Brilliant researcher, absolutely fantastic researcher. So Doug had a very similar background to me. So for those who don't know me, there's an SRA, MK Ultra background. My accent belies the fact that I'm in Australia. I grew up in South Australia. Doug grew up in New South Wales, and our fathers were very, very similar in many, many, many ways. And just so happens we both got, my maiden name's McIntyre. He's a McIntyre. He's done the genealogy, and we are actually, distant cousins. I love that man dearly. He taught me about heterochromia. So I have heterochromia. I have what's called central heterochromia. So this is the color of the iris. And central heterochromia can either be genetic. It's really interesting. It can be one of two things. It can be genetic or it can actually be trauma related. Now, if you go on the internet and you study it, it'll say that it's genetic. But the MK Ultra scientists were studying this in the Second World War, and obviously, through paperclip and matchbox where they went to Australia, the Nazi scientists just got deposited around the world and they continue to do their studies. So with heterochromia, which is a eye coloration, you've got central heterochromia, where there's a different color around the pupil, bless you, darling, than around the rest of the iris. You've got partial or segmented heterochromia. So you might get a little flash of brown or blue or some other color in the iris that's in a segment, or in part of it, like a third of it might be a different color in one eye.
Right.
You also get full heterochromia, where a person might have one green eye and one blue eye, or one brown eye and one hazel eye, perhaps. So you can actually get, it's quite freaky. You can get someone with central and full heterochromia as well. So in the Hindu religion, people with different colored eyes, and then the number of different colors in the iris is also, like, the more colors you have, the more likely you are to have some of these characteristics in the Hindu belief system. So they believe that people with heterochromia could convene with God, could see the future, were really highly psychic, were telepaths, were telekinetic. So there's a lot that's sort of around that. Now, obviously, the Nazis were absolutely obsessed with the occult. They could see many gypsies. So this eye colors, it's very unusual in brown-eyed people, Asian people. So it's mostly in your Caucasian races, but it's really quite prevalent in the Romani population and in the Celtic population. So according to, when you look it up on the internet, they don't talk about the trauma aspect. They talk more about the genetic aspect. So to have central heterochromia, for instance, where you have a different color around the eye, pupil than the rest of the iris. So you might have brown around the pupil and green around the rest of the iris, and green-eyed central heterochromics are like are likened to be more psychic than others. That eye coloration is 1% of 1% of the world's population. It's a very small number. Boys with central heterochromia are 30% of that 1% of 1%. So it's more common in females, but still extremely rare. And it's 1 in 200 Caucasians basically have this. What's really interesting is that I have a lot of people with this eye coloration who come into my psychic development course. They have a lot of these skills. They also are more adept at seeing ley lines, which is fascinating. So there's something in this. So ley lines are magnetic frequencies. So it's interesting that you married these two topics today, because they go very much hand in hand, and I'm not surprised that you would do that. Ley lines are visible. People don't seem to realize it. I'm doing my best to teach people that. So when you're standing within a ley line in nature, you will see these perfect circles, like tunnels through the landscape. And that perfect circle with perspective will be replicated along a walkway that you're going through. Plants and trees avoid growing within ley lines, I think out of respect. I'm sort of halfway between either that they don't like the frequency, or that it's out of respect because these are the Earth's meridians. I think it's probably more out of respect. They're very conscious and they're thinking.
Right.
But yeah, people with the heterochromic vision see them more easily. I've also noticed people with heterochromia, particularly central heterochromia, because that's the one I see the most, are usually, now I've got to get this right, tetrachromats. So you can have trichromatic vision, or sorry, I'll start dichromatic, trichromatic, or tetrachromatic vision. So there is things that you can look at with all these different colors, and the number of colors that you see on this particular tile that I use in my course. If you see, say, 20 odd in this 40 odd color bandwidth, you're a dichromat. If you see more than that, trichromat. And if you see the most colors, you're a tetrachromat. So tetrachromats they see as well as a bee. They see all these different frequencies, aspects of the electromagnetic spectrum that other people can't see. And that goes hand in hand also with heterochromia, which is just so fascinating and interesting.
It is. No, sorry, carry on.
What is also really interesting, so again, if you look online, they'll talk about this being genetic. There is this absolute obsession in Hollywood with people with heterochromia, either full, partial, segmented. In fact, the Marvel series, if you look at the actors and actresses who play the Marvel parts, almost all of them have got either full, central, or partial heterochromia, because they know that these people have these abilities. So yeah.
So we're not, are you actually saying with that the actors and the actresses, and I'm sorry, I don't know who they are because I don't really watch these things, and I probably should, just to inform myself so I don't look like a bit of a dumbass when I talk about it. But are you saying that the actors themselves actually do have the superpower abilities of their character?
Yes.
Do
Well,
you?
whether or not they have the superpower abilities, I'm not 100% sure, but the people in the know in these secret societies know about heterochromia. And the reason I know that, so many people come to me and say, this Freemason walked up to me one day, looked in my eyes and asked me to join. And I never understood why until I saw one of your interviews and you talked about how they all know. So
Wow.
it's as plain as the eyes on your face. If you've got these abilities, they know, they can see it. Our children that are constantly being photographed, you send your child off to have their school photos done. They're always terrible photographs. They're expensive. Why do we do it? Government gets to see what your child's eyes look like. They know who they can then stick in their gifts and talents programs. So with the Hollywood types, so Mila Kunis, Scarlett Johansson, Ray Fiennes, Henry Cavill, the guy who plays Magneto, I can never think of his name. There's so many of them. In the prevalence in Hollywood of people with this eye color is just well above chance. It's probably about half of them at least. Not De Niro. Well, pretty much all of the Marvel characters. If there's a Marvel character, they've got it. And a lot of the other Hollywood actors and actresses. It's pretty freaky.
I'm wondering because, I mean, when we look, I mean, of course, my mind is going at 100 miles an hour here at the moment because it makes me wonder, just talking about the Marvel characters, right? Um, if they themselves actually have those abilities, because we know that they would have been in the system if they are in some type of famous position
Yeah.
or famous actor or actress, they more than likely would be in the system
Bloodline
and
family.
and would have probably been chosen for those roles because of their eyes. And who knows, when you're looking at all the stuff that these kids have been trained to do in the system growing up, they've probably been trained for those roles.
Yes.
I don't know. Do
Yes.
you think that's possible? Am I like really
No,
going off
you've got it.
charts here?
You're spot on. So the other fascinating thing, and again, I've got to credit Doug McIntyre for this. Those eye colors are also supposedly also connected with trauma. And when you have someone who's severely traumatized, they can easily have an alter part. So what you're saying is actually spot on. So your actors and actresses are taking on a role. So their alter part that might be overtaken by a demonic entity would then come out during that role. So we do hear about
Like an avatar, almost like an avatar.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the eye color, that's a sign of them having that ability. And it's also a bloodline family trait.
I was about, must be genetics, must be bloodline
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah,
And obviously with special gifts and abilities, spiritual gifts. But as you say, which I wanted to get into, was the trauma side of that, because you would know better than anyone else what trauma kids in the system go through. And it's almost like their psychic abilities are forced out of them.
yeah,
Um, Weaponized, yes, but stretched beyond what they should be. But they're smart enough, the handlers or the abusers are smart enough not to go too far. They'll take them, and it's almost like taking a cloth and stretching, 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 and keeping it there and just stretching until the cloth eventually stretches that far without ripping. Do you know
yeah,
what I'm saying? So,
yes.
absolutely, this just brings on a whole new dimension
Mm,
of Hollywood and CIA, doesn't it? Because I mean,
absolutely.
we know Hollywood is CIA, so we understand now that, I mean, these are like weapons. These people are
Mm,
like, they're like weapons, human weapons.
yes, yeah. So we've been weaponized. I believe my father chose the two women that he bred with. Well, there was a third, but we didn't find out about that brother until 2012 because they had central heterochromia, because most of his 6 children have it. And 3 of my siblings are half siblings, and my father didn't have the trait, even though he was Scottish. So all of my siblings, bar one, had it. And the one that didn't have it is the one that he treated the worst because he wasn't valuable. So again, I was used in MK Ultra programming, so were some of my siblings. And I have this eye color. So, and according to Doug, again, when you're dissociative, when you've been really traumatized and it shows up in the eyes and you're dissociative, that's someone who's very good to use and then further control because they can see it. It's in your eyes. It's that obvious.
Brings a whole new meaning to eyes are the windows to your soul, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I want to just make it very clear here. This is not me talking about being better than anybody else because I have this eye color. What we're talking about are some really sick people that use this information against humanity to control people. So again, Hollywood is purely there to forecast what they want the collective consciousness to follow, and they use people like these people with these eye colors as tools for that.
Wow.
In fact, I'd say it's a lot better for people not to be born that way because they're not going to be used in that way. Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating the lengths that they go to. Um, because yes, I would imagine in your eye, because your eye is so, I mean, you go to an iridologist, that person can tell everything that's wrong in your body
Yeah.
just by looking into your eyes, by
Yeah.
looking at the shape of your eyes, the color of your eyes, the what or the white of your, how whatever is going on, it really is the window to your health, your
Yeah.
body, and those that know and have abused it and used it for nefarious purposes will obviously know there's so much more to that as well. Wow, Rachel, I
There's,
mean, that's
there's
astounding.
there's a fascinating correlation also between the Rh negative bloodlines and those who have this condition also. So, and I'm not sure what the percentages are of, say Rh negative blood in the Scottish population, because obviously heterochromia is very connected to Celtic, but also Romani Gypsy, which is interesting. So there's a connection there. So when I meet people like that, I often ask, are you Rh negative blood? Or is there somebody in your family who has that blood type? And there's a correlation there. There's a higher percentage than there would be if they didn't have the central heterochromia. Yeah. So, I think it's important for people to know, because if you have it, or if your children have it, for God's sake, do not take photographs of your children's eyes and send them all over the internet. People do that when I talk about this, and that's really dangerous because that's an identifier, and it's also will red flag your child. But children who have this eye condition, it's probably best not to have school photos, so that the government can't have that access. Just my personal opinion.
Well, we know how they get access, and schools are obviously one of the main feeders.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know just listening to Jesse's testimonies for years now as well. I mean, the teachers are placed there. And I know Australia has been rotten with the Freemasons since the beginning, basically, right? So they would have most certainly had their teachers and little spies, if you can call them that, snooping there. That is just terrible. My gosh, again, I'm blown away. I'm blown away by this. And especially when we go to the actors and the actresses.
Yeah, so I would love to have had I should have got a whole list together, but it's astonishing. So every time you look at, a Hollywood actor, check their eyes out. I think most of the Friends cast, Beyonce, I haven't checked out Taylor Swift, but Beyonce definitely has it. So again, these are really programmable people. So anybody's in the really, really famous, really in those higher echelons, check their eyes. And you've probably got an MK Ultra, subject there. Most of the time, it's very likely they are MK Ultra, regardless of their eye color. But if you check it out and they've got the central or full heterochromia, poor things. Robert Downey Jr., that was the other one that was coming to mind before and I couldn't think of. Yeah.
Listen, I've always thought he's quite sassy. I've got to say, even though he's really obviously very far gone in whatever he's doing, but I've always liked him for some reason. Wow, that's crazy. So let's talk about the trauma, the heterochromia through traumatization. So let's say if a child was maybe not born naturally with heterochromia, how does the trauma induce that?
Great question. This is where I would love for you and Doug to have a conversation on this, because his research is exceptional. I don't know to the degree that he does how that works. It's still being studied. So it's still such a fascination. They're still studying it, So, how do you study that? You traumatize people, which is great. But the mainstream would rather the mainstream information is that it's genetic, which is really interesting. So that either there isn't this aspect, even though there appears to be, that there's a trauma aspect to it, or there is this aspect and they don't want people to know. And so the mainstream will let you think that it's genetic.
Sure. I mean, again, because I would imagine, let's say somebody goes in there and they don't have heterochromia, but let's say they have different spiritual gifts, that they might want to use for other stuff, or whatever it might be. Who knows why they choose? But then that child would go through abuse anyway, because it's part of the programming. And I would imagine that when a child dissociates, now correct me if I'm wrong, okay? When a child dissociates, because I've heard testimony from people who've been raped by their fathers as young as 18 months old, especially after the father was first the bonding parent, because that's how they do the trauma bonding. And then that's the very same parent that abuses, right? And just that in that moment, the kids literally fly off on unicorns and with angels and fairies. And they're just kind of out there while this trauma is occurring in the body. And of course, we understand that's the mind's way of protecting the child. Because can you imagine? I can't. What that must do to a child. You would know much better than me. But I can imagine the trauma of just that act alone, let alone repetitively, is something that must forever change the makeup of that child. No matter how much the child can heal. I look at you and I look at people like Joanne Breeze as well, the other Australian who's also been through horrific trauma and abuse. And I see how you guys have healed. And I see where your heart's at and I see the work you're doing. But that can never ever change what was. It can never ever take away the trauma. But I think maybe then on some level, if that has brought you psychic gifts, for example, they would remain as well, right?
Yes.
In terms of that. So you would then get that, but I guess it's about how you use them and how you channel them and kind of like temper them in your body. I don't know. Can you maybe speak into that a little bit? Because I feel like I'm grappling at straws there. I don't really know. I know what I want to say, but I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly.
Well, what you're saying is actually correct. So the Freemasons believe that if you traumatize a child, particularly through sodomy, before the age of 3, that you can open them up psychically. So what they're doing is they're basically attacking the vagus nerve, and that is forcing that Kundalini frequency to move up the spine. You don't need to do that. Most children are psychically open, but they want to do it with force because they want to control it. With dissociation, when a child dissociates, yes, they'll go off into other realms, and usually they'll meet their spirit guides, they'll meet their higher self, and that forges a bond. Now, when you are in a situation, I can only speak for myself, because I had those experiences from a very early age, my bond was with them, not with my father. And that bond continues. And the guide that was with me as a child is still with me, even though she keeps saying I'm above her pay grade now and tries to put other guides in place. I still have her there. That interaction of being in other worlds, when you have that, of course you're going to be psychic, because this materialism, this academic materialism bullshit, we know that it's not real because we've been somewhere else. We've had experiences. We've come back with knowledge that we shouldn't have known. You come back with a connection with those beings that can then share with you things. You can ask questions and you get answers. When I first saw a ley line, I didn't know what this circle was that I was looking at. I asked my guides and they said it's a ley line. And I said, that's freaky. And they said, yeah, you wait. Later on, you're going to do things with this, but right now, just take photos. And that's what I did for about 12 years. And then the time came and it was time to speak about the ley lines. And that's my absolute passion. I had to get through all of the dealing with my trauma first, experiencing and expressing it, and healing to be able to start doing what I actually came here to do. I don't believe I came here to talk about my childhood. I believe I came here to do the psychic work that the childhood initiated me into, but that I transcended, and now I'm doing this work. And as I said to you off camera, there's a biblical, apparently in Revelations, I've seen it, but I can't tell you exactly, which chapter of Revelations it is. But there's a chapter that states that the last fight is over the ley lines. So we're in this fight right now. We had the permanent harmony time come in of the ley lines at the end of last year. Obviously, there's many of us doing the sort of work you were describing off camera. This is a big shift. This is huge. And I think we're doing really well. I can see the earth is fighting back with us and helping us.
Yeah,
and you can see by
absolutely.
the numbers of psychic attacks that people are getting and the sort of pushback that they're trying to do, which is not being successful, they're freaking out that the dark, I'm talking about those that have co-opting and have been controlling the layers for so long. And the way they do that, they force them into straight alignments, and they put their arenas on them, and they put in their churches where you go and watch a sacrificed individual, Jesus Christ on a cross, in his sacrificed state, and worship the sacrifice, not the being, but that state. And that's all on ley lines. Every church is sighted on a ley line by a Freemason with a sighting rod, because they know you can see them too. So it's really, really, it's just, this is where we're at. So this is the fight, and this is what I came in here to do. Most likely it's what you came in here to do. Probably quite a few of the people who are watching this came in to do this too.
Well, I have a ley line right on my property. In fact, I'm sitting on it.
Yeah, which is
And
perfect.
I want to tell you, it gave me the high jump for the first year that
Yeah.
I was living here, because there was lots of and there's two portals right in front of me. And but it's actually been such an incredible experience, because I understood what was going on. Um, and well, it took me a while, let me say. When I understood what was going on, I was like, wow. And then I've started clearing them. And I remember that's when I was doing, I think maybe a month or two after I clicked onto that, I was doing your workshop, which was amazing, because how everything sort of just fell into place in terms of that. And now I've been able to, and definitely with the help of my birds, I feed the doves twice a day, 3 times. These fat little things, they look like miniature soccer balls with feathers and heads and feet. I mean, they'll come and demand food anytime, but I love feeding them. I love to see how happy they are. I love
Oh,
that. And they run here, and especially when it's cold, and they chase each other, and they cook, 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 and then they come into my house and they get caught here, and they poop all over my place, and they tell me it's good luck, and you know, I'm like, thanks. And honestly, they come in when I've had spells and things happening on me. They come and they break glass, babe. They come in here, they'll stand on something, and I've watched the one. Do I was like, you did not just do that. And then after one particularly harrowing incident here, one night, they chased my birds away. There was no birds the next morning. And then there was one in the tree, because they literally sleep on the tree with a branch that is above my bedroom. So they sleep
oh,
above me. It's amazing. And
and
then
they create a vibration that's
oh,
really high.
totally. But
Wow.
and when all of this stuff was going on, that bird came to me and said to me, "We're glad you're safe." And then went on just to kind of give me information that feeding them and their pecking, that is exactly what's done the major. And of course, the doves represent peace. So
Yeah.
with that, and along with other things as well, they've helped me clean up this ley line. I'm telling you.
Well, they purr. Bees create a frequency, cats create a frequency.
Yes,
They're known to purr
absolutely.
also. Yeah.
They're amazing. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. We just see more and more how nature works with us. To me, nature is God in action. Our creator, the invisible creator, has no texture or form in physical form. But when we look at nature, that is God in action. We are like a tree. We are a more complex version of a tree for sure, but our basic needs are the same, right? Give us good food, water, the right environment to thrive and flourish. And bear fruit. It's that simple, you know? And I almost think we have to go back to that simplicity of just being at ease, you know? And these are things that all just, I just see it as knitting the fiber of humanity together again, that we can, um, yeah, find our peace again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And those acts, like my birds are in an aviary, but I have budgies and finches and these little quails, little button quails. They're very small. They have all the behaviors of a chicken. The rook, or sorry, the male will make the same little clucking noises when he's found a morsel of food, and the girls will come running up to take it. The babies come out fully running around and feeding themselves, and just completely adorable. It's so tiny. And I hand feed them every day. And it's a problem because I can't get in the cage because they want to run under my feet. There's no fear. And those interactions are just, that's beautiful. That's a grounding experience. Yeah, it's very, very good for the soul.
Absolutely. It really is. And when we see that, you know, when we have nature working in harmony with us, then or when we work in harmony with nature, you know, then we're going to find what we need and what we're looking for. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's
amazing.
interesting what you were saying before. You've got two portals out the front.
Yeah.
I was looking on social media recently, and a friend had shared this basilica, the Gozo Basilica in Malta. And out the front's a quite spectacular sandstone, I believe, building. At the front, there are 3 marked circles in the grounds, like quite spectacular. So a little bit like when you look at the Vatican courtyard, it's one big massive portal with all the lines marked out and
Yeah,
a
exactly.
obelisk in the center with a copper top, because that's all about energy being frequency being harvested. So I'm looking at these 3 circles and I'm thinking, there's 3 portals right out the front of that church, massive church. And then there's actually a little line, and then there is this maze on the ground. And I've seen this maze before. It's the Freeland symbol. And I immediately realized, oh my God. So where you've got 3 portals that cross, you can time travel. You can travel to different places on the planet through these symbols. Now, I looked this symbol up and it just looks like a maze, right? But it's supposedly a symbol of finding enlightenment, going through the maze of life to find enlightenment. But you see this symbol around places that are not churches. There is one in the Fortuna mansion grounds in Bendigo. There's another one in nearby Forest. There's one in Queensland. This is not just for, an enlightenment symbol. And so if you look up Freeland passport, and I'm not really into this, but when I saw these symbols in these places and then looked up the passport, it has exactly the same maze symbol on it. And this is supposedly a passport that allows you to visit the continents that we're not supposed to know about, that are on this planet. It's very interesting. So
And we're not talking aeroplane flying now.
no. And so the Indigenous of my country talk about, and this is current law, they can find places where they can go into these portals. I don't know whether or not they mark out these symbols on the ground. I've got to start asking some questions now, because this has only just come to me recently through this friend. They believe they go into these portal spaces and they can end up in another part of the world. Now, I've got a friend, Trevor, who's talked about this in interviews. I have a movement called Lay Love Down, and we do these knowledge transfer sessions, and he did a masterclass for us. And he talked about, he can go, he's had this experience. He's been in one country, walked into one of these portals, and ended up in another country. So where you get ley lines that cross, they create a vortex or portal space. Now, this is technology that I think a lot of ancient cultures knew, this particular basilica, the Gozo Basilica in Malta, was built around 1250 on a Rogan pagan ritual site. And I really recommend people look it up. It's absolutely fascinating. But those three circles, they are interlocking, overlapping. So every time I look into, ley lines or portals, I learn something new every single time I look. It's just mind blowing. So I'm really into this symbol now. I'm gonna find more of them and work out exactly what's going on there and how to access them.
You keep me posted. You keep
Yes,
me posted.
yes, I will. I will.
I want to find that portal to Australia. I've
I'm
been
not keen on plane travel.
I've been promising the kangaroos I'm coming to visit them.
Yeah. Oh, they'll love it. But that
I'll
leads
just
us
blame the
into
kangaroos. It's their fault.
it leads us into the owies. So I mean, a kangaroo is weird enough. So here we're going into Australian nature or fauna. The kangaroo is this big weird animal that jumps around on two legs, uses its tail like a hopping device, has a pouch. I mean, this is bizarre. Arachidnas have a more developed frontal lobe than humans. They're one of the most developed prefrontal cortexes in the world, and I learned that from a wonderful book called Sand Talk by an original Australian. Echidnas lay eggs, and yet they're called a monotreme. They look like a porcupine, but they're very small, and they fossick and live along negative ley lines. So I learnt this from a wonderful woman that I did a land healing course with recently. Burrowing animals, and they dig into the ground, the echidnas, insects like ants and termites that create humming frequencies love negative ley lines. And it's because they are balancing.
When you talk about a negative ley line, can you just explain what a negative ley line is?
Absolutely. So from a visible point of view, negative lays tend to be small. So as I said before, when you've got so for instance, a positive ley line, where I live, they're roughly usually about 2 meters across. You can get much bigger ones, but where I walk in nature, they tend to be about 2 meters across. They create this beautiful channel through the bush. So it's the path of least resistance, also known as song lines in the indigenous culture, because it has a different frequency and makes a different sound. And they get sung along because you're supposed to sing as you traverse them to create a balancing frequency. The negative layers are much smaller. They still create a channel, but the smaller animals use them. It's pretty wonderful. So they usually are roughly about a foot across. And again, it's a perfect circle running through nature. And you'll see your termite mounds, you'll see your ant mounds, you'll see the marks where the echidnas have been. They've got big claws.
What
Yeah,
do you
so
call those things?
an echidna.
How do I spell that?
Echidna. And they're a monotreme, one of the most ancient living creatures on the planet.
Okay, and you say an echidna has a more developed frontal.
Prefrontal cortex. Yeah.
h-
Yeah.
How? Can you explain that to me? I mean, it's a porcupine, and how does it use that? I mean, I'm just trying to think, is it a big brain or is it just a very developed, small brain, but very developed, if that makes
So
sense?
I'm not a neuroscientist. I actually just did an interview with a wonderful woman called Val Ratova, who is a neuroscientist. She'd probably answer this question really well. So from my understanding, they have that incredibly complex brain because they are extremely specialized feeders. They only eat ants and termites. So they've got to know where they are. So I don't know completely, but again, one of the most
Yeah.
ancient beings that have ever lived on this planet, still alive
That's
today. So obviously that's kept them alive, and the species keeps continuing.
it's what it seems like to me because if I'm like thinking about that, the image I see in my mind is not that it's very big, but the size of it is very, I want to say most condensed or compressed, but lots of activity. They use it all. It's all busy, not just parts of it. The whole brain is busy.
Yeah.
They've
And
learned
they
to, they've learned to develop whatever their brain is intended for. And I'm finding it hard to say the words because I've not actually seen something like this before. But whatever it's intended for, it's being fully utilized. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
it does.
yes, and as you say,
Yeah.
that that's what they're meant to do, and they have, and it makes perfect sense that they are one of the probably the most ancient creatures on the earth, that they've spent so much time, and it's beautiful to know they do here what they're doing here what they're meant to do, right? Each one has a little part in the ecosystem, whatever that might be, but they have absolutely waxed that. That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty freaky. So they're non-placental, but they act like a mammal, but they lay eggs, and yet they suckle their feed with milk, but they don't have any teats. And they have a pouch. Yeah, they're pretty freaky. So we also have a platypus, which also has a poisonous spur. So that platypus are water dwelling, related
Yeah,
to the echidnas, also a monotreme, you know, lay eggs, all of those things that I just mentioned with the echidna, but they also are poisonous. So, a platypus can kill you if you get a strong
yeah.
enough dose. These are amazing creatures. And again, the platypus's activity and they're quite frenetic behavior in the waterways is also what keeps the waterways clean.
What do
I've
they
learned,
do? What is
yeah.
what is their behavior?
So they live in usually running water, and they fossick around for worms and things in the stones. So they're constantly keeping any kind of silt keeps moving down the water. They're an amazing litmus test for the health of the area. If your water's polluted, they won't live, and they'll leave the area or they just die. So unfortunately, they're not as common as you find echidnas everywhere in Australia, but you won't find platypuses often because they have to have pristine water.
Then let's talk about the kangaroos because they are also cryptids. The kangaroos are known to be cryptids. I mean, what a fascinating, I just love them. I have not even smelt or touched or even seen the hair of a real kangaroo in this life. But I will. I work with them a lot and I communicate with them a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's amazing because Joanne Breeze, who's we mentioned earlier, obviously has her kangaroo sanctuary in Australia, and she rescues the babies and has the mobs and things. Wow, and I've learned that I've adopted two kangaroos.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yes, me and my granddaughter. I have one and she has one. And I mean, it's amazing. And we get little videos, and of course, Jan keeps us up to date, learning a lot about them and their habits and things. But what fascinating creatures, right?
And they also use ley lines.
Yes,
So the
always at
echidna,
the ley lines.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the roos use them as well. So I've gone out in nature so many times. Ley lines often run in pairs. So if you look up a man called Rory Duff at roryduff.com, he's a geobiologist. He studies ley lines. He was the one that I learnt from that we're going to go into this permanent harmony time at the end of last year, which we're in now, which could last hundreds of years, if not, 1,000 years potentially for this golden age that we've come into. But the kangaroos, so often you'll see one of these wider 2 meter wide ley lines that run through the Australian bush, and Australian bush can be pretty thick. And usually next to it there'll be a smaller one, and they run in pairs. And so the roos will use the
Do they
smaller
run parallel?
parallel. Yeah, yep. And where you get them crossing over each other, where they're not running parallel but they're actually crossing, that's where they'll create a vortex because the frequency sort of mingles and then creates this beautiful vortex, which is a portal space. So that's where you'll see your Yowie cryptid entities. So in Australia we call your Bigfoot type entities a Yowie. In my opinion, and I've had this experience myself, I've stood in a portal space not far from where I live, and I saw what's called Australian megafauna that existed 50,000 years ago. So I actually had to look up and find out because I was in a portal space. They were looking at me. I was looking at them. It was a massive wombat and massive snub-faced kangaroos. 50,000 years ago, the kangaroos had no snout. They had a flat face like a human. It's actually really weird looking. So we're all freaking out. And then I looked it up in the local library, and 50,000 years ago they did exist. Both the massive wombats, and then these are huge creatures, and these huge kangaroos with these snub faces. So I've had that experience, and that's what sort of woke me up to the fact that cryptids exist. What I believe is that when you're in a portal space, time doesn't exist. So you can look back in time. So what I think the Yowies and the Bigfoot are expressions of humanity from long past. And we're interacting with them. So they're interacting with their future selves. Now, that's my opinion. I have a beautiful friend who did my course called Kylie Hakam, and she's gone on to Yowie Central recently and done an interview. It's fantastic. She knows a lot more about it than I do. She's had her own Yowie experiences. What I learned from her is they'll leave us messages. So within those portal spaces, if you find a stick that's Y-shaped, and it just seems odd that it's there, like it's been obviously not cut, but broken to create a Y. I don't know if this is how they got their names either. I'm just assuming that there must be some sort of connection. They will often bite it to leave their mark on the Y-shaped stick and then leave it in a portal space. So it's like a calling card. So what the trick is, when a human bites down on a stick, will produce a particular pattern. These have got much larger molars, so you'll get a completely different pattern. So it's like a stamp. So again, how does a creature communicate with you in a way that will show you who they are, but they can't use our language? So that's another really curious thing that Kylie shared with me.
I actually am so glad you shared that, because I wanted to mention earlier on, but this just seems the perfect time now. You know Greg Braden, right?
I know that name, yeah.
Greg Braden he's amazing. He's an author and really just understands the UN human DNA, and also done a lot of this type of stuff. And I just caught a clip of his the other day where he says, these AI bot monster things, whatever they are, and he says, that's our future self. He says, we handed over our sovereignty to AI, and that's what we've become. And that's them coming back now, altering and wanting to access our DNA because they want to get back to being more human.
Yeah, wow, yep.
And it makes a lot of sense, because if we come from that path, of the past of who we were, and according to my communications with a kangaroo, they tell me they were once human too, or they can be both. They can actually live.
I've got to send you a photo of these 50,000-year-old ones because they look really human. Really
I'm
cool.
telling you, that's what they tell me.
Yeah.
And so it just makes so much sense that we've given away. Yes, there has to have been some form of evolutionary process for us to reach where we're at now. And then, of course, if you think about where we are now and timelines and things, past timelines, future timelines, we know exist. Okay, that's not even a fairy tale anymore. Okay, so we got that right. So the past would be something more spiritually connected, in tune with nature, very psychic. There's no words needed, that we just kind of, everything is just via energy, ESP, love. But of course, now we evolve, and I don't know, we decide to change not change, but transform our DNA and blah, blah, blah. Now we're the perfect species, but interesting that the future says, no, we want more, we want more. Now we're disconnecting from the very thing that gave us life to begin with. And our future selves realize how we've cocked it up. Now we're just a bunch of steampunk kind of robots with no soul, walking around, probably destroying things, I don't know, and just like destroying planets and just being mean. I can imagine, but you have no soul. You are
Oh,
now.
exactly.
So now some form of our future intelligence is figuring out that we need to kind of be here and stay with humanity. So maybe we can change our future timelines, actually.
Oh, I absolutely believe that. 100%. I mean, that's what the Terminator movies were all based around, weren't they? Like we were creating these, automatons. And when you look at a psychopath or a narcissist, as we were talking about earlier, they don't want to have to feel shame. They don't know how to feel shame. A psychopath has no shame. They don't know what that feels like. They have to mimic. They don't know emotion. They have to mimic others to try and produce the sorts of behaviors so we won't know what they really are. They want to create an avatar that doesn't have to worry about going to hell for doing the things that they just do naturally, which are horrible.
Yeah.
Mm.
But how can they think that they're not responsible for that? Because if we understand karma, karma is cause and effect. That's all karma is. And from the minute that Creator breathed life into our spirit, that our spirit was born, right? Because soul is an aspect of spirit that becomes part of your human experience. So that every moment has been recorded. It can't not be. It is, that's what the Akash or the Akashic records are. It's the recording of your actions of your soul.
Yep.
You can never hide from that. So no matter how far you try and run away and become a flippin' big robot, transformer robot, you ain't running away. You've still
Well,
got that
yeah.
spark, that connect, or that little thread, the God thread, right? I call it the
Yeah,
God
you're
thread.
100% right. Yeah, because and
So,
again, back to ley lines, the Akashic, I believe, is transcribed into the ley lines. I think that's why they're called song lines also, because they know the indigenous know they go there for that esoteric knowledge. It is that frequency, that information. But I think what they're trying to do with these avatars is escape death because they know that the soul. I mean, we know from the Mother of Darkness information that's come through channels like yours that when one of these Mothers of Darkness is about to die, another person comes along and sucks out that last breath, which is so revolting when you think about it, takes on that demonic entity that's incorporated within that Mother of Darkness to then perpetuate. So these entities are parasitic and they're very clever. Somehow they get
yeah,
people to keep doing this behavior.
exactly. They're vampires, total vampires. I mean,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
Raphael, they can't actually, they have to have the host body, somebody else's host body. And what are they? It's like a walk-in almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that's a suck-in though. That's not a walk-in, that's a suck-in.
Oh yeah. Just
You
the horror that these women will do this, that they'll be bred for this purpose and then actually go and do it, because what they're doing when they take that soul into their body is they're giving up their body for something else to never.
absolutely.
And I guess they do it for power, I suppose, or because they have to. They don't feel like they have an option.
Exactly. I mean, we know that majority, well, all of these hierarchy, the bloodline families. I mean,
Mm.
they have the families, and of course, the kids are tested at birth. I mean, when you've listened to Jesse's testimonies as well, I mean, they'll go to a normal class function, and they'll be standing in a queue, and the mothers will come there and go, that. You don't even know what you're being picked for. You think you're being picked for something. Meanwhile, they've already decided you're going to live or die. You're a hierarchy kid or a bloodline kid. And then the ones that they deem to have spiritual gifts then get taken and get, you play games, you choose items, what do you see? What do you take? And from the gifts that you take, for example, that's then when they now start seeing which areas they can groom you in. I mean,
Oh
it
yeah.
is
Yeah.
so sadistic. It is disgusting. And yes, like when we're looking at our presidents and things, they all, I mean, they're all born for this purpose, right? These movie stars, these popes, they're all born for this purpose. They are all, I think that when there's been ancestral abuse, and especially when it's satanic abuse, there's so much pain, so much suffering, so much blood, so much trauma that they lose their empathy.
Yeah.
And that, I think, that lack of empathy then just becomes part of the DNA. They just, their DNA becomes completely non-empathetic. So you
Yeah.
can do these terrible things that they do and feel zero and take great joy and delight in doing that. I don't
And
know.
that's part of the reason why they do it as well, because they don't feel anymore. And
Yeah,
Angelica's really, instrumental in teaching people that, and it makes so much sense because
yeah.
they know they don't feel. They want to see someone suffer.
That's that whole sacral chakra shutdown that we were talking about, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
that the narcissists, a narcissistic person. And narcissists are, I know a diagnosed narcissist is the higher percentage is that of male, but it doesn't mean that females are not narcissists at all. In
No, they
fact,
can.
I think a female must be, I can't say worse, we equal. We just do things differently. We can't say one's worse than the other. The intentions are both very horrible. Um, but
I find worse in women because I'm a woman and I see we're supposed to be a symbol of nurture. So when I was abused by women, it annoyed me more than the men, even though the men were penetrative. It made me feel more sick and more annoyed and more, resentful.
because we are supposed to be the creatrixes of life.
Yeah, we're
We are
supposed to know.
supposed to be the nurturers. I mean,
Yeah.
how can a woman do that to a child? It's like, then you're not dealing with a woman. Her soul is so gone. There is definitely
Yeah.
this other demonic entity that's coming through. Yeah.
And that's really pertinent because most of the politicians that are female don't have children because
But
they
isn't
don't
it
have
also because they're really born boys? I mean,
well
if you look at
yeah.
Nicole Kidman. I mean, I know Fiona Barnett has spoken at length about that.
Yeah.
That I mean, while she was still in her mom's womb, that Anthony Kidman was doing tests on her. She was born a boy. She
Yeah.
was genetically a boy, and while she was in womb, he was doing these transgender experiments on her, which is why she can't have kids. But apparently, she has like breasts and the girly bits, but on the inside, it's male. Now that's what I heard from Fiona Barnett, who grew up with Nicole, and a lot of rumors speak about the fact that he actually died because he couldn't get Fiona. That was a big
But if you
thing.
look at him, he has a very feminine face. So I would say he was probably born female.
Wow, there you go. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. And I mean, this crazy stuff. Have with the French president, Macron, and Brigitte, his wife, have
That's
you been
mental.
following that?
Most of it, I got to the point where it's quite likely they're father and son, and that just blew
Yes.
my mind.
Yeah. I mean, that for me, I mean, Candace Owens, one up to her for that, boy. I'll drink a bells to that girl, that's for sure, for bringing that out because they were trying to sue her. I mean, she was
Oh,
being
yeah,
sued by the French president, yeah, and his
yeah.
wife. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You see, and then again, Michelle Obama, that is all of that. And I mean, it's this whole transgenderism thing. And if you even, I mean, Nicole Kidman again, I mean, you look at her body, she's tall
Yeah.
and slender, and every woman thinks, oh my gosh, I wish I could look like that, because we've been taught to think that being round and voluptuous and hey, I'm not talking unhealthy, okay? I also believe that we need to be healthy. Being obese is not healthy. Let's not be
Mm.
stupid. I'm talking about curves and your
Yeah.
feminine curves. I mean, there's none. We've been taught to believe that that is not okay anymore. Mostly.
I was brought up in the 70s and 80s looking at, Sports Girl and all of these illustrative, magazines where they were all 14-year-old boys. And yet we were all made to feel that we were inadequate because we didn't have these pumped up, fake breasts, which we didn't realize were fake, and these slim hips and extremely long limbs. which, you know, women don't tend to have that, you know. And so now every time I see a clavicle, I'm like, male or female?
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's bred such insecurity in us because how many people have looked at Nicole thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be tall and slim just like her. But you look at the back, she's got no hips. She's got boy
Yeah,
hips. She's
yeah,
got a
yeah. And that
complete boy
flat part of
figure.
the back,
Yes, flat.
she often used to say, because she's got a little bit of a tummy. And I
Yes.
often wondered if that's a prosthesis, because she used to, you know, people used to, you know, pick on her about it. And she used to say, but that's the most feminine part about me. And I'm thinking, yeah, because it's probably not real.
Yeah, exactly.
Women added on.
So many of them, little Taylor Swift as well, with their little micro penises walking around. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But anyway, it kind of takes us back to what we were saying about the whole, um, what were we actually saying? Talking about,
It must have come back to ley lines. It must have.
yes, it had to come back to Leyland, but tend to go off on a tangent every now and again, which is fun. I like going off on a tangent. Especially with you, Rachel. You're such a nice tangent buddy. We can talk about these things.
For hours.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
you know, I still think that there is some sort of element of, you know, time travel with regards to what we see. But what you were saying before is really fascinating. So we are going, I was freaked out by AI, terrified of it. I thought, oh my God, they're all demonic. But I've been watching some stuff lately and listening to some stuff that some of what's being channeled through these AI machines, whatever you want to call them, this is high level, also angelic, that is coming through. So I'm
Yeah.
not advocating for AI at all. I am not happy about, you know, any kind of takeover in that area, but I can see that it can actually be good and bad.
Oh,
I'm still
totally.
hesitant.
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, without technology, I mean, we would not be sitting here, right? And we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able, I mean, yes, I mean, technology and artificial intelligence there's a fine line.
Mm.
I like the AI pictures they draw. Nowadays, I'll just say, draw me
Right.
this, and the next minute, that I like. I'm not even going to lie about that. So, yeah, they are definitely. But hey, Grandma, yeah, grew up eating mud cakes in the rain, okay, on the farm. This whole tick, tick, tick thing, I'm like, just give me a pen and paper. I want pen and paper. Thanks. I'm happy with
Yeah.
my pen and paper. And every now and again, I have to go into your calendar on there. Like, oh, I keep forgetting to fill this thing in. you know, so it's like, I don't know. I just like nature. I like the idea of we go back to just communicating telepathically,
Yeah.
where we humans and we in our fullness of who we are, and we are able to just create this environment where we are able to share, trade with each other, trade fairly. Yes, of course, we're always going to have conflict, for the foreseeable future anyway, because that's also how we grow.
Yeah.
I love to mix cultures and things. And yes, even though it's much easier and we have less conflict when cultures and things aren't mixed, but is that really real? I don't think it's real. As humans, we need to engage with each other, but find a happy balance. I think that's what it is. And when we do that with each other, the earth finds her peace again.
Oh, 100%. Amazing man, Indigenous to Australia, Clint Walker, said that country gets lonely for people. It's one of the most profound things I've ever heard. It, at the time when I heard it, I thought, but we've been taught to believe that the land hates us, that we're there, we're like a cancer on the earth, are we not? And we're causing so much damage. To hear that said, and then to go out into nature myself and recognize that that's exactly what's going on. So everywhere you see ley lines, you will see these pareidolik, supposedly nebulous stimuli, but like faces in nature. And these are the nature spirits. And the more I talk about ley lines, the more I share and more I teach about ley lines, the more nature spirits show themselves to me. And they're always,
Exactly.
90% of the time, when you see a humanoid apparition, an animal apparition in the dappled light, in the plants, in the sky, in the clouds, in the water reflection. They are looking into the ley line. They're saying,
Exactly.
hello, have a look, it's important. So Clint was right, 100%. The country gets lonely for us. We're supposed to be interacting with the country like the echidnas are supposed to be, like the kangaroos are supposed to be. We're supposed to be having that interaction, and also recognizing how important the ley lines are. And from that knowledge, also recognizing that where these straight alignments are in cities, you know, around the Vatican, in my city where I grew up in Adelaide, when you know they're there, you can change it. Even though they've got their massive structures, their buildings made out of these piezoelectric rocks that are there to control the ley lines, we can go in with intent, and with crystals, we can change the frequency. We can move the leys around these buildings so they can't develop or withhold the loosh anymore. And
Exactly. Exactly. And it's all just about getting things into alignment. As we bring ourselves into alignment, so we are able to see. It's like exactly what you're saying, you know, with your healing that you've experienced in your life, and obviously being spiritually gifted as well. Um, but the more you heal, the more you see, and you know how to bring it back into alignment. You know, and we must never forget this. We as humans need to be healing ourselves first. Healing really means to bring yourself back into balance. It doesn't mean you're broken. No one is ever broken. You might feel shattered, you might feel fragmented, but I don't believe you are ever shattered or fragmented. So it's just really about bringing yourself back into balance, finding your true purpose through the trauma, and then being able to use. And, you know, and that's why I say they took so much from you guys that have been SRA'd. They've taken so much from you guys, but they also gave you things that will help you navigate the future for a lot of other people. Places that you guys have seen that we haven't seen, experiences that you've had that we haven't had, right? So to be able to then help people navigate and understand what these creatures of the night are up to, what their tricks of the trade are, revealed to us, so come on, it's like you've done spy work there now. You know what I'm saying? And now we can see what they're up to, what the dodgy ones are up to. The stuff they thought they were doing in the dark will always come into the light.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The more of us who speak about it proves that their MK Ultra mind control doesn't work, because it's not successful all the time, and which
Exactly.
will hopefully make them feel very, very nervous and uncomfortable. And I believe they are very nervous and uncomfortable now.
I think they definitely know. I mean, they know they're on their way out. You know, when you just look at so much social media and so many people. I mean, I saw a video clip on some youngster approaching Rothschild in the street,
Oh,
telling
really?
him and it was a genuine video. And he was like asking him, and he says, I can't remember what he was asking, but really just saying, your time is over, right? Like basically, we know about you, the world knows about you. You've been fooling us for long enough.
Oh,
And
what a hero. Wow.
yeah. So, and I mean, all you got to do is look at just the social media. I mean, Diddy coming up. Yeah, there's so much more with like Diddy and all these nasty ones. They all know their time is coming. They think it's not though. They're sitting there pretty, but yeah, and it's true what you say. They try and escape the gates of hell, but they really are in hell and they don't even realize it. Isn't that sad? That is
Yeah.
hell, actually.
Yeah,
To
it
do to
is.
do that, that's hell.
Well,
Hmm.
any kind of alignment with the dark entity is a living hell,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they'll if you might have power, these people might have power during their lifetime, but at the end of it, they don't own their soul anymore.
No.
They get consumed. Again, another reason why they're obsessed with avatars. Maybe they think they can avoid that. But I know my father was terrified, and I've tried releasing him from the dark place that he's in. He's still there. So something's dragging him back, or perhaps it's his own shame. But I believe he's there for a reason. He's still in the dark.
Right.
Mm.
Well, I think he has to make his own peace.
I
Make his
think
own
to a
peace.
degree it may be a choice thing, But yeah, I have another family member in the same place. They're not together, but it's the same black place.
Mm.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, Rachel, well, I'm very happy that you aren't in the dark anymore.
Oh my, absolutely.
That someone took you out of that hellhole and shone light where you truly deserve it. All of you survivors, honestly. Yeah, thank you for surviving and telling us the stories.
Linda Leylons.
Yeah. Rachel, I know I'm not even sure what the time is, but I think we probably must be about done. But I'm wondering if there's anything from your side that you still have to share with us. And yeah, you can tell our viewers where they can get hold of you, stuff like
Sure.
that. What are you up to? Any shows, workshops you're doing you want to share?
Well, I have my June course coming up on the 6th of June. I'm not sure if that'll come out before then. I'm going to be at the Living Free Festival in August, which is really exciting. That's in New South Wales. And I'll be at the Cosmic Consciousness Conference in December at Mount Tamborine in Queensland, which will be amazing as well.
No,
So I'm looking
no. So you nice. I mean, I didn't mean no. I mean nice. Are you talking? And obviously, you're
Yes,
going to be.
yeah.
Where can
And
people
I've
get
just got
hold
an
of
event in
you?
Adelaide. So they can find me at www.number6th6science.com. So that's my website. So and all my buttons are on there, my socials, and you can
Yeah.
email.
So if anyone wants to get hold of you, fantastic. Rachel, thank you so, so much. I really, really, really appreciate you and for sharing all this knowledge that you do with us. And look forward to having you back again. We're going to go more into all these things because I really think, with all the decodes and things that we're doing on the buildings and what they look like and where they are placed, it's good to understand where the ley lines and how that works along with them as well. So thank
Yeah.
you. And all your creaturey things. Thanks,
Thank you,
Rachel.
Don. Much appreciated.
Take care. God bless. Thanks, everybody. See you very soon.